Part of the Furniture by Mary Wesley. Read by Anna Massey. A full moon lit the street, stretching ahead. It was a long street and empty. The houses had blinded windows and secret, shadowed doorways. Only an occasional polished door knocker reflected the moon. There was no sound of traffic, and although the air raid siren had wailed its alarm an hour before, she could hear no planes. "You'll be all right?" they had questioned. "Find your way across to Paddington? Better take a taxi." Their minds were already ahead on their journey. They kissed her goodbye, fumbled hurriedly with last-minute inspiration into inside pockets. "There, take this, pay for the taxi, take care of yourself." They humped their luggage into the train, forcing their way into its crowded corridor, merging without backward glance into the crowd of khaki and blue, the smell of tobacco, damp uniforms, and sweat. The notes, now held between freezing fingers, had been warm from their bodies. She pushed the crinkled paper into her bag and snapped it shut. There had been no taxi. "If there's a raid," one of them had said, "take cover, go to a shelter, or take the tube. You'll be all right in the tube. London looks wonderful by moonlight, an austere mix of charcoals and greys, secret, mysterious." Already the memory of their voices was fading. There was the distant crump of guns, and simultaneously the sound of bombers droning up the Thames. Shivering, she turned up the collar of her coat. New shoes pinched her toes. Taking them off, she stood in her stockings. The pavement was smooth and ice-cold. The warmth of her feet melted the frost and wet her feet. As she moved on, the street seemed endless. To have decided to walk so that nobody would see her tears did now seem pretty stupid. Suddenly the bombers were immediately overhead, and from close by a battery of guns fired, and a man's voice yelled, "Bloody fucking moon!" infecting her with his fear. Walking was a lot easier without shoes. Try not to think of the bombers. She began to hurry, and almost running, pretended, as they had taught her all those years ago when she was a child and gullible, that she could catch her shadow. They had played that game the last week of August, running and leaping by the light of the harvest moon among the corn stooks before the declaration of war. Both over 6 feet. Their shadows weird and wonderful beside hers so puny. When the stick of bombs fell, she cowered by the railings, holding her shoes and bag by her ears. When the last bomb dropped, she began to run. Running, she avoided the cracks in the pavement, shortening and lengthening her stride like a wounded bird. When the man caught her by the elbow and jerked her up steps into a house, she yelped with a mix of terror and indignation. She caught her breath to protest as he slammed the door shut. "You will find it healthier in here," he said, letting go of her arm, "and warmer. Have you far to go?" She said, "I'm on my way to Paddington." "You would have been safer traveling by tube. What's your name?" "Juno." He did not laugh, or remark that she had a long way to go to grow into the part, but said, "Nice. And your surname?" "Marlowe." "Fine combination." He was tall, but bent and frail, with hair faded almost white. He breathed hard, catching his breath with evident effort. "This will go on all night," he said, as another stick of bombs began to fall. "Do you always carry your shoes?" She said, "They pinch my toes. It's easier to run." He said, "Sensible. You had better stay here until the raid is over. Do you want to tell anyone where you are? Telephone?" She said, no, thank you, she did not need to telephone. "In that case," he said, "let us check who else we have in the house. There's a stout table in the kitchen which seems to inspire confidence, though personally I have a phobia about getting buried alive. I spend these nights on a bed I've had moved into the drawing room, but you're welcome to the basement if that's your preference." She was impressed by his courtesy. She raised her voice above the thump of guns to shout that she too feared being below street level. This was not the moment to tell him that this was her first experience of an air raid. "Right then, upstairs it shall be," he said, leading the way to the basement stair. "But first, let's just see who's here." The people in the kitchen lolled round a table. A man in a naval uniform dozed with his head on his arms. 2 women sat knitting, and a broad-beamed lady stood by the stove, stirring the contents of a saucepan. There were 2 girls in party dress and their escorts in guards' uniform sipping wine. The woman by the stove said, "Hello, you're very late. We thought you might have got stuck. Soup?" "No, thanks." He shook his head. "But you, Juno?" Juno said, "No. No, thank you." "What's that you're drinking?" he asked. One of the girls said, "Wine. Want some?" "No," he said. "I've got whiskey upstairs." "That sounds near the zoo," as another stick of bombs dropped. The girl, who had not yet spoken, said, "I wonder where they've evacuated the penguins." Her guardsman shouted, "Whipsnade! Must be Whipsnade!" In a corner of the room a man sneezed, said, "I have the most god-awful cold. I shall give it to all of you. I apologize for the infection in advance." The second guardsman remarked, laughing, "That will hardly matter if we get killed in this." His girl exclaimed, "Oh, Nigel, honestly, we were on our way to the Café de Paris. We want to dance." Her voice was blotted out by another bomb. The woman stirring soup said, "That was close." But the man with the cold said, "I think it was farther away. What do you think, Evelyn?" Juno thought, Evelyn. What a nice name. Evelyn said, "Hard to judge. Come on, Juno. Let's get ourselves some whiskey." As they turned to go, he called over his shoulder, "The Café de Paris has a glass roof. I suppose you know." Everybody laughed, and one of the guardsmen shouted, "You're pulling our legs. The Café de Paris is underground." Evelyn muttered, "Even so," leading the way upstairs, pulling himself up by the banister rail, walking slowly into his drawing-room, to sit heavily in an armchair, breathing wheezily. He was deathly pale. He said, "Could you pour me a drink? Pour one for yourself. It will do you good." Juno poured a finger of whiskey into each glass and gave Evelyn his. He swallowed a mouthful and thanked her. "It's very cold. Could you turn on the fire?" She knelt to light a gas fire, which popped and gurgled among imitation coals. He said, "Do you think you could ease off my shoes?" He looked exhausted, she thought, glancing up as she unlaced his shoes. He said, "Thank you, Juno. All those people are my neighbors. They like sheltering in my kitchen. They come to comfort me." "I had an impression of fear," she said. "Of course, but crowding together helps. The neighbor with the soup brings it with her. It gives her right of entry. You should have had some. It's excellent soup." I was too frightened. Watching her, Evelyn said, "Then drink your whiskey. Courage is not confined to the Dutch. Go on, lap it up." She swallowed obediently. She had never tasted whiskey, though she knew its smell. As the spirit burned her throat and ballooned into her head, she looked for a chair, but there was only one by the fire, and he was in it. So she sat cross-legged on the floor with her back to him. Evelyn said, "Presently, when I've caught my breath, I shall get onto my bed over there, and you shall lie beside me. Listen to the bombs and tell me the story of your life. So where were you running from on your way to Paddington, pursued by demons?" "Euston." "What were you doing at Euston? How old are you?" 17. I was seeing them off. "Them?" "Jonty and Francis." "Who are?" "Friends." "Off to the war. Drink your whiskey and tell me about yourself and this, Jonty and Francis. Brothers?" "Great friends. And cousins." "And you are in love with them?" "It feels like it." "And they with you?" "No. No, I am a person who is, sort of around." "But they took you along to see them off." She said they would not allow their families to see them off. They said it would depress them. Boring, Jonty had said. But then, suddenly, as a joke, they took me along. We came up to London last night, she said, and today they had some shopping. Then we went to a movie, Ingrid Bergman. We had lunch at Wilton's. Lots of oysters and brown bread and butter. They drank stout. I suppose you know it." "Yes." Then, after Ingrid Bergman, we had an early dinner at Quaglino's. What did you eat? I can't remember. Then it was time to catch the train, so... Oh! She put her hands over her ears as a stick of bombs whistled and shrieked to fall nearby. Gosh, it's noisy. Go on. You got to Euston. Yes. Well, they said take a taxi. They each gave me 10 bob, and they said take cover if there's a raid, or better still, go by tube. And they got into the train. Contradictory. They weren't thinking. In their minds, they'd already left. I've seen them like that before, going back to school or university. You are half grown up. Have you a father? He died. Mother? Gone to Canada. Expecting you to join her. But I don't want to. I am scared of submarines, and... You want to stay as close as possible to Jonty and Francis. She did not answer. A fire engine raged along the street, followed by an ambulance ringing its bell. The guns were firing still, but further away. He said, "So what will you do? Where will you go? Have you relations?" "No, no relations. No relations I can bear. Only Aunt Violet, who is stuffy and conventional, kind and interfering." "No," she repeated, her tone obstinate. He said, "All right, if that's what you want. So where were you heading?" "Nowhere. I told them I made up a cock and bull story. I did not want them to worry." "Do you imagine Jonty and Francis will worry?" Stung by the contempt in his voice, she looked up at him, furious. "Beast!" She tried to stand up, but the whiskey affected her balance. "Actually, I let them think I was going to Canada. They know my mother took my luggage with hers and that I have only a suitcase left. I shall collect the suitcase and cash my ticket. That will give me time to think what to do." "Ah." "I know," she said stiffly, "that they won't write. They will not be allowed to, where they are going. They're both bilingual, French and German. They will train... Jonty and Francis should not have told you. Jonty and Francis will not survive long, he thought. Jonty and Francis did not tell. I eavesdropped, Juno articulated carefully. I must be drunk. You shouldn't have given me whiskey. I've never drunk it before. Now I have betrayed them. Try not to be stupid. He was weary. Downstairs there were voices in the hall. Footsteps clattered out into the street. The front door slammed. He said, "Gone dancing." Got carefully to his feet, and, moving to sit at a desk, drew writing paper towards him, wrote, folded the paper, put it in an envelope, licked it, sealed it, came back to his chair. "For what it's worth," he said, "I have written to my father. He will help you. Should you get stuck, need help, take this, put it in your bag. Go on. Now give me your hand. You are drunk, and it's time to sleep." He led her to the bed, where he lay down fully dressed. She sat beside him, holding her head in her hands. He said, "Lie down. You'll feel better." She lay down. He pulled a blanket over them both. "Lie quiet. Go to sleep. There will come a time when Jonty and Francis are just a bad dream," he said unkindly. She shuddered away from him, but he pulled her back, letting his arm lie across her body. She was drunk. She would wait until he was asleep, then slip away, let herself out of the house and run. But when the all-clear sounded, she slept on. The cold woke her, the chill weight of his arm across her waist and the chill pressure of his body along her back. She slid free, tiptoed to the door, crossed the landing to the lavatory, raised the blackout curtain a fraction, saw daylight and snow falling. She went back into the drawing room to find her shoes and put them on. "Evelyn," she said, remembering his name. "Evelyn, it's snowing." She shook his arm. It fell slackly away from him. She touched his face with the back of her hand, held her breath, heard none of his, saw that he was dead. 5 minutes? 10? A moment later? She tiptoed onto the landing. listened. The mahogany banisters led down to the hall. She leaned on them, lifted her feet, swooped once, twice, sliding down into the hall, opened the front door, and let herself out. Violet Marlowe stilled the clatter of her alarm clock and waited 5 minutes before getting out of bed. On the floor above, boards creaked as her lodgers padded about. Presently they would tiptoe downstairs, wheel their bicycles into the street, close the front door, and pedal off to breakfast at their club on their way to their offices in Whitehall. John Baines to the War Office, Bill Bailey to the Admiralty. John and Bill had been friends of her husband Dennis, killed in 1918. Their wives were confident that lodging with Violet, they would stay clear of mischief, while she, for her part, was grateful for unobtrusive masculine company during the raids. Violet went down to the basement. There she made herself coffee and sat to munch a bowl of cereal. Hardly had she swallowed a mouthful when the doorbell rang. She exclaimed, "Blast!" and went upstairs. "Goodness," she said on opening the door, "it's Juno. What are you doing here? I thought you were in Canada." "How smart you look in uniform." Juno stepped back, feeling unwelcome. "Did you have it specially made?" "Of course. I don't believe in off the peg. But don't just stand there. Come in. You must be freezing. Come in," she repeated, leaning forward to kiss her niece. "I came." Cautiously Juno returned the kiss, noting her aunt's scent, Elizabeth Arden's blue grass. "To see you. Oh, you smell delicious," she said. "I understood you were joining your mother in Canada." Violet quizzed her uninvited relation. "I'm off to work. You've only just caught me. Have you had breakfast? Like some coffee?" "Coffee would be heavenly." Juno followed her aunt. "These days we eat in the kitchen." Violet strode down the hall. "I encourage the maids to join up. Help yourself to coffee and tell me why you're not in Canada." Juno poured herself coffee and drank, closing her eyes and shivering. It had been so cold walking through the snow, her feet were numb. "I don't want to go," she said. Juno looked awful. What was the matter? The girl needed help. How should one talk to girls? Being childless, one didn't know how to start. "So you don't want to go to Canada, but would rather join one of the services? Do your bit? That it?" "I don't want to join any of the services, Aunt Violet." Juno's eyes met her aunt's. "Don't tell me you take after your father." Violet was aghast. "What do you mean, Aunt Violet?" "My dear, he was a Conchi." "I am proud of him," Juno bristled. "He was a brave man." "My dear girl, he went to prison." "Yes, where he contracted TB, which later killed him." "Ignominiously." "Was there not ignominy in the trenches?" "I barely knew my father, but I admire him. He did not believe in violence." Violet stared at her niece. "Have I got this right? You do not want to join your mother in Canada, and you do not want to work for your country in time of war. So why are you here? Are you short of money?" "I wondered whether you would let me have a bath. I have some money, thank you. I was caught in the raid last night. I missed my train back. I feel so filthy. There was a man who died. Oh, my dear. Why didn't you say? You've had a shock. You shall have a bath, and I will put you to bed in the spare room with an aspirin. You'll feel much better after some sleep. Come along. Seeing a man killed is no joke. Between us, we will sort you out." "But, Aunt—" "Not now, Juno. Later. Come along." Violet put her arm around her niece and led her upstairs. "Everyone caught in a raid gets dusty. There's plenty of bath water." "But I wasn't. There wasn't a bomb." "Of course there was. You're disorientated. We see lots of this in the Red Cross. Rest is what you need." "Could you lend me a pair of clean knickers?" "Why, yes, of course." Had the girl peed from fright? People did. One heard of it. But Juno was family. Could she have? Violet plumped up the pillows of the spare-room bed and, finding a pair of knickers, returned to the bathroom. Lying there in the bath, her wet hair clinging to her skull, Juno reminded Violet of her brother. He too had been long and thin, but fair-haired, where Juno was dark. "You have not told me what you were doing in London." "I came in for the day. Missed my train back. I have to go back to collect my suitcase. It's still in the cottage." Juno closed her eyes. This water's lovely. She felt she could lie in it forever, forget and forget. But her aunt was speaking, enunciating carefully. "Is your mother going to marry that man?" "I did not know you knew about Jack Sontag." "She made no secret." "What do you think she went to Canada for? To escape the war?" Was the girl being pert? "Your mother would not run away." Juno's mother, her sister-in-law, whatever else, was no conscientious objector. "I think she has decided to marry again. The man is rich, got some sort of business. Do you approve of him as a stepfather?" "Mother likes him. Personally, I don't care if I never see either of them again." "Juno, what an unnatural thing to say." "No more unnatural than admiring your brother, my father, and desperately wanting—" Juno sank down into the water to hide a rush of tears. Oh, so desperately wanting Jonty and Francis. Coming up to breathe, she said, "You're being so very kind, Aunt Violet, considering you do not really like me." Violet breathed in, held her breath, let it out. "You are my niece. Of course I like you. Blood is thicker than water." "What a remarkably silly expression that is," she would say later that night, when regaling John Baines and Bill Bailey with an account of Juno's visit. "The very fact that a person is a relation can be irritating. If she were not my niece, I am sure I would like her more. She looks like my poor brother. I could never approve of his ideas. They were so, well, embarrassing." Bill Bailey said, "Perhaps it's as well she left before you got back from work." Violet said, "No, Bill, dear, no. I feel I should have stayed. I could have reasoned with her." John Baines said, "Girls like that do not see reason. It's a waste of breath." Squashed into a corner on the crowded train, Juno read the Evening Standard. The bomb which had fallen on the Café de Paris had killed a great many people. Had those girls, sheltering with their boyfriends in the basement kitchen, frustrated from their fun by the raid, reached it in time to get killed? The man had told them about the glass roof. What had been his name? Sitting squashed in the train, she tried to remember. She had left a polite note on Aunt Violet's hall table, thanking for the coffee, the bath, and the knickers. Quite unlike the pair, they had eased off her gently, determinedly. Well, not so gently, perhaps. Those were now crushed into her bag, slightly torn. It had been a mistake to visit Aunt Violet. She must collect her suitcase and escape, Juno told herself, shrinking from the prospect of returning, however briefly, to the house she had lived in for so long with her mother. It was too close to Jonty's and Francis's homes, did in fact belong to Jonty's parents, who were now renting it to another family. "Nearly reached Reading," said a woman's voice. "Will Fred be meeting you?" "Either Fred or my daughter," said her neighbour. "You getting out here, love?" nudging Juno. Juno said, "2 more stops." "There's Fred," said Fred's wife, "standing under the lights so I can see him. Don't these wartime lights make people look like corpses? Fred, here I am," she waved. "Here," she shouted. Evelyn. The man's name was Evelyn. Evelyn Copplestone. He had not looked like Fred, but he had been dead. 2 stops on from Reading, stepping out as best she could along a road slippery with snow, and only fitfully lit by a moon which dodged constantly behind clouds, Juno's thoughts, those she could spare from Jonty and Francis, concentrated on the thick shoes, warm socks and dry clothes waiting in a suitcase left in the scullery cupboard at the cottage. Tomorrow she would return to Reading, surrender her ticket to Canada at the travel agent, be given a refund, and with this be in a position to decide what to do next. She must find a job. The refund would not last long. Her mother, expecting her in Canada, had left her with the minimum of money. What about her mother's friends, Jonty and Francis's parents? Would Susan Johnson and Marjorie Murray not help? Were they not old family friends? Had they not always been kind? As she slid and slithered along, she decided to go and see Jonty's and Francis's parents and enlist their help. They might even ask her to stay the night. She stepped inside the kitchen door and felt for the light switch. Then, remembering that the house was empty and that the curtains might not be drawn, forbore to press it. Outside, the wind was rising, whooshing through the Scots pines. There was the sudden noise of the front door being opened, voices, and the door slammed shut. She slipped off her shoes, crossed the scullery in stockinged feet, and shut herself in the broom cupboard. Marjorie Murray and Susan Johnson were twin sisters. Their voices loud, confident, uninhibited. From the enclosed space of the broom cupboard, Juno could hear every syllable. "It all looks clean and cosy. When do they arrive?" "They said before dark. They may have been held up, but I suppose we should expect them any time," Jonty's mother said. "James said if they've not arrived by now to turn off the electricity. He's afraid that not knowing the house they might shine a light, splinter the blackout. We'd better do what he says." "The house is blacked out, isn't it?" "Of course it is, but you know James and what he's like since he's become head of ARP. The Cooksons are new. The Marlowes were habituated. I wonder how she's getting on in Canada." "Haven't heard yet. I shall miss her." "So shall I. Did the child go?" "Juno? Hardly a child, but not grown up either. Where's this main switch?" "James said under the scullery sink." "What an inconvenient place." Juno could hear Jonty's mother shuffling to her knees and muffled a laugh. She was a large woman. "I've got it. Switch on the torch, Marjorie, while I turn this off." The light under the cupboard door turned from yellow to blue. "Gosh, we look comical in this light," the sisters chortled. "What happened to Juno? I thought she'd gone with her mother." Susan Johnson breathed hard from her efforts. "I'm a bit vague. Staying with her aunt? Following on in the next ship? Do you think Jack Sontag will cope with her? He struck me as an able sort of man. But Juno, she was always under the boys' feet, tagging along like a puppy, poor child. All very well when they were younger, but they need girls of their own age now. They were both so kind and patient with her. She must have got in the way. Her mother being such a friend, one couldn't say anything. I must admit her departure eases things. Eases things." The sisters had a trick of repeating what the other had said. "We must organize lots of pretty girl visitors for their leaves. Their leaves. What they'll need most is girls and fun. And fun. It's called sex," said Francis's mother, Marjorie. "What do our darlings know about sex?" Susan was amused. "Sex is called love at their age." "Oh, Susan, it's still sex." Marjorie laughed outright. "And I hope it will be with girls we like, girls who will make suitable daughters-in-law, girls with a bit of money." "A bit of money." Susan laughed too. "How awful we are. There's time enough. Did I tell you that I told Jonty to tell that child they were going off on such secret missions they would probably never come back? Wasn't that a bit much?" Marjorie sounded surprised. "I thought it would stop her hanging around. I thought she was capable of not going to Canada. You said yourself that you were afraid if she did not go to Canada, you would be asked to keep an eye on her, and it would have been a chore." Their feet slapped across the scullery floor and into the hall. The front door opened and slammed shut. Their voices diminished. The pain from the surprise they had provided did not. Emerging from the cupboard, such a charge of rage pulsed through Juno's body that she felt hot. Fumbling in the dark, she stripped off her clothes and dressed again in the clothes from the suitcase: Viola shirt, woolen sweater, corduroy trousers, wool socks, and heavy walking shoes. Bloody women! Bloody women! How could they? How could they? All those years, so smarmy, so kind, so charming, so bloody patronizing. She did not cry. The humiliation was beyond tears. Juno shook with anger, felt warm and energetic, forgot the soreness and discomfort, the bruised ache between her legs, engendered by her first sexual encounter. Though she had, once or twice, when they undressed, when they went swimming, caught brief glimpses of their parts, she had thought little of it. No one, least of all her mother, had thought to tell her that those dangly bits of Jonty and Francis could expand telescopically into something which could force an entry and hurt. Had they tossed up as to who should go first? Had she exclaimed, "That's never going to get inside me"? Had they heard? Had they listened? They had said several times that they loved her, and she, while experiencing no pleasure, had cried out that she loved them, and laughing, for it had been better to laugh than to cry, had caused one of them to grunt, "Don't laugh, I haven't finished." Afterwards, she had been happy when they petted and kissed her, saying, "You were lovely, a sweetie. We didn't hurt you. We did not mean to. We've never done it before," murmuring as they fell asleep, and she, not sleeping, had lain between them, listening to their sated breathing. Standing in the cottage scullery, shaking with anger, Juno detested their mothers with her whole being. The wind was dying in the trees behind the house. A siren wailed in faraway Reading. Juno picked up her suitcase, opened the cottage door, locked it, and threw the key, far into the dark. The inside of the cottage had been pretty chilly. Outside it was freezing with a knife-like wind, and thanks to her own perversity, she had no coat. There was the warm and lovely houndstooth tweed with satin lining, which had used up all her clothes coupons, and the serviceable old overcoat worn every day to school. "There's wear in it yet," she could hear her mother say. "This new one I shall pack. I shall want you to look your lovely best when beginning your new life." She had grumpily watched her parent fold the houndstooth tweed, lay it in the trunk, close the lid and lock it, and she had left the despised old coat, accidentally on purpose, in the room where she had spent the night with Francis and Jonty, an action she now regretted. Had her mother noticed her friend's objection to her hanging around? Had that weighed the balance, made her decide to go to Canada? Had she not also said, "I am doing this largely for you"? She had. "Damn her," Juno whispered. "I love her, but I will not go." The fact remained, though, that she had no coat. The houndstooth tweed was probably in Canada by now, and it was freezing cold. Although the doors in the Murray's house were usually locked at night, Juno knew where to find the keys. To walk round the Murray's house by the road would add mileage to her journey, and the arm which carried the suitcase would ache worse. Besides, there was something she wanted hanging on the row of hooks outside the gun-room. Juno walked swiftly across the Murray's lawn and let herself in. The conservatory door was not even locked. The air in the conservatory was still. She listened and heard nothing. Juno stepped forward and, reaching the passage, tiptoed towards the kitchen. From his basket near the Argus stove, an old Labrador heaved himself up and padded towards her, mumbling a greeting. She whispered, "Oh, shush, my lovely old boy. Please, shush." The dog wagged its tail harder, barked. In the front hall, the outer door slammed shut, and a light went on, Francis's father returning from his ARP post. Juno skittered across the kitchen into the passage to the gun-room and dived in among a row of coats and mackintoshes. In the kitchen, Francis's father spoke to his dog. "Go back to your basket, you old rogue," the dog barked. "Shut up! Basket!" Juno listened as the dog's claws clicked across the floor and the wicker creaked as it obediently lay. Marjorie Murray's voice called from upstairs. "Is that you, darling? I heard Bonzo bark." Francis's father answered loudly. "Yes, it's me. Shan't be a minute." He pushed open the door into the passage, letting in a stream of light as he hung a heavy overcoat onto a hook, brushing past Juno's chin. As he did so, he farted loudly, then he went out, closing the door. A beautifully mannered and courteous man. Juno had never heard him fart. She breathed in and out several times to steady her nerves. Then, reaching up among the jumble of coats and mackintoshes, she found what she was looking for. The coat, brought back from their trip to Hungary in 1937, had been a joint present for their mothers. They had only been able to afford the one, Francis and Jonty said. Their mothers wouldn't mind sharing, would they? So often they shared their dresses, they could do that with this coat, couldn't they? The coat was of dark brown sheepskin leather, the fleece on the inside. It had black frogged buttons from waist to chin, a bell-like skirt. There were deep pockets and an astrakhan collar. Jonty and Francis had been tickled to death. Marjorie and Susan had affected pleasure, but the coat had a nipped-in waist which did not meet round their ample figures, and unbuttoned it looked ridiculous. With their sons out of earshot, they murmured, "What a waste of their money." And one of them said, "Well, we can't leave it just lying about. Hang it up." And hanging on the row of hooks in the passage outside the gun-room, it had gradually been worked to the back and forgotten. Juno was sweating when she eventually freed the sheepskin coat, carried it into the kitchen and put it on a chair. Breathing deeply to still her fear, Juno became aware that she was ragingly hungry. "Let's just have a little look," she whispered to the dog in its basket. The dog twitched its tail. Juno felt her way to the larder door. Carefully she took a cold potato and ate it, then a meat risole. Bolder now, she tore the legs off a cold pheasant, ate, gave a bit of skin to the dog, who had followed her. She drank deeply from a jug of milk, then backed quietly out. She could not give the pheasant bones to the dog. They might splinter inside him. She gripped them between her teeth. Could she risk the lavatory? She could, and did, using the servant's washplace, but not pulling the plug. Only then did she put on the sheepskin coat. It fitted beautifully, as she had known it would. She buttoned it from waist to chin and turned up the collar. Letting herself out, she whispered goodbye to the dog. When she reached the road, she threw the pheasant bones into the ditch and began walking. She was warm and fed, and her conscience had never felt better. It took several days to recover the rebate on the ticket to Canada. "There's a war on," the man in the travel agent said. "There are forms to fill in. I have to work by the book. Can you prove your identity? Have you a passport? An identity card? We have to be careful. Let me see your documents." Juno said, "It's all on the ticket." The man raised his eyebrows, staring at Juno through wire-framed glasses. "I have an uncle in Canada," he said. "He seems to like it. How do you spell Marlowe?" "As it's spelled on my passport." She pushed the passport closer to his hand. "Ah, and Juno. Funny name. You foreign?" "She was a Greek goddess." "As I said, foreign. Slowly he filled in the form. "Sign here." Juno signed. "Come back in a couple of days." "But—" The man shook his head. "As I said, there's a—" Juno said, "Oh, God." "You get in touch with him, then, or the Greek tart. Next? Yes, sir?" As she turned to go, the man behind the desk was smiling at the man who had taken her place, looking positively anxious to tackle his dilemma. She was startled when he called out loudly, "Miss?" "Yes?" She turned back. "Left your passport and identity card." He handed them to her. "You should be careful of those. Got your ration book?" Juno said, "Of course, thanks," as she ungratefully thrust the passport and identity card into her bag. The man said, "See you Thursday, then." In the street, Juno checked her bag to see whether she actually did have her ration book. She did. It nestled against the envelope Evelyn Coppleston had given her. She would go to the cinema. It was cheap and would be heated. She bought the cheapest ticket and went in. The film was halfway through. She was asleep when they played God Save the King, and the cinema emptied. An attendant woke her, and she found herself back in the street. She returned to the station, where she ate a horrible but filling bun in the buffet and drank some wishy-washy tea, which was so hot it burned her mouth. Then, finding an empty seat at a table, she sat down to watch people come and go. The buffet was relatively warm. It reeked of humanity, buns and tobacco. From time to time she went out onto the platform to gulp fresh air and read the notices, which said, "Careless talk costs lives," and more humorously, "Be like Dad, keep Mum." In the freezing air, she congratulated herself on the acquisition of the coat, which was snug and intimate. Back in the buffet, she dozed fitfully through the night, waking once to find a group of soldiers sitting round her playing cards. Seeing her blink, one of them invited her to join in. She won 3 shillings, which they insisted she keep. She felt quite sad when they left to clamber onto their train. "Gotta get back to fucking camp, love. Bye." Later, their places were taken by bluejackets, who were partially drunk, and made remarks she did not understand or respond to. Juno was glad to see them board the next train and dozed off again. When she woke next, there was a young woman sitting opposite her with a baby on her lap. The young woman said, "I sat on this when I came in. It's yours, isn't it?" She handed Juno a black woolen cap. "Got a boyfriend in the Navy?" "He gave it you, I see. You'll love that. My sister's boyfriend's a sailor, but he wouldn't give her his cap. Put it on, keep your head warm. That looked nice with that funny coat." To please her, Juno put the cap on. The woman said, "Lovely." Juno felt that to undeceive her would lack tact, and after, when she caught sight of her reflection in the buffet door, decided to keep it, for the woman was right. The cap looked fine with the coat and was blessedly warm. But at the time she said, "Manna from heaven." The woman said, "Haven't seen that one. There's no time for the flicks when you have a baby." At some time during the second day, she was asked by a railway official whether she was all right or was she in trouble. She told him she was all right and thanked him, said she was just waiting for a friend. Sometime in the early hours, the station official, who had been off duty but had come on again, woke her. He was accompanied by a policewoman. She told them that what she was doing was waiting for the rebate on a passage to Canada, and that until she got it she had no money. But the man in the office had said, "Come back Thursday." When Thursday came, she would get the money and be all right. The station official remarked that he was the father of a young daughter, that it was Thursday, and the travel office would be open presently. But meanwhile, if Juno came to his office, he would give her a cup of tea. Please follow. Juno followed. In the official's office, she sat on a hard chair by a coal fire, drank scalding tea, and ate a spam sandwich so liberally spread with mustard it brought tears to her eyes. Then the official inquired where, when she got the rebate for the passage to Canada, Juno intended to travel. She, to stop him prying, handed him the envelope given her by Evelyn Copplestone, addressed to his father, which reposed in her bag, and immediately the station official said he would work out a route for her. It was 8:40 now, and the travel office would be open by the time she got there. When she got back, he would have her ticket ready, put her on the 9:50 going west. So she set off through the town to the travel agent. There it seemed quite natural for the surly man to smile as he handed her the rebate on her passage to Canada, and for the waiting to be over. Back once more at the station, she paid for the ticket the railway official had obtained for her, and to please him, for what else could she have done, got into the train he told her to, and began a journey she had not planned to a destination she did not know. "He's in London, me dear, but you better come in." The woman opened the door wider. "Come in," she said. "'Tis cold. A letter, you said?" "Yes." Juno repeated what she had said on the doorstep, a simple variation of the sentences she had composed on the long journey. There had been 3 or more trains, 2 changes, 2 lengthy waits for connections, the unscheduled scramble along the track in open country. "I met your son in London, Mr. Copplestone. There was an air raid and he said At one moment during the journey she had got it almost right, but hitting the right note had only helped to tighten the bonds which knotted the grief, the anxiety, and the anger lumped in her midriff and clogging her mind. In the event, she had held the letter towards the woman who opened the door and said, "I brought this letter for Mr. Copplestone." And the woman said, "He's in London, my dear, but you'd better come in, 'tis cold. A letter, you said." Then, when Juno was in and the door closed, she took the letter and, looking at it, said, "Mr. Evelyn's writing," and laid the letter on a salver which sat on an oak table. A dog had appeared, its nails clicking on stone flags. It came across to Juno and snuffled round her legs, thrusting an icy nose against her fingers, jerking her hand up for attention. She could feel its whiskers. The woman, looking closely at Juno, said, "Soup." Part of the furniture, Side 2. Reaching the porch, Robert Copplestone kicked off his gumboots and pushed the door open. Hearing him arrive, Anne came from the kitchen. "You're back." She helped him out of his overcoat, which she shook. "Still snowing, and that suit is too thin. Hot toddy?" "Please, Anne." "You walked," she accused him, looking at his feet in thin silk socks emerging from black suited trousers. "Funerals is always chilly. You should have changed before you travelled. Where are your shoes, then?" "The taxi couldn't get up the hill, so I borrowed Bert's boots. I left my shoes and case at the farm." Anne clicked her tongue. "In this weather? You look like death. The fire's lit in the library. Go into the warm. I'll bring the toddy." "Where's Jessie?" He glanced round the hall. "She'll come. Go and sit by your fire." Anne pushed him gently. He walked slowly across the hall to his library to slump in an armchair, close his eyes. Anne came with the hot whiskey and water. "Drink." "That's good. Thank you, Anne. Ah, Jessie, where were you? I've never known you not to be there." "Got better things to do." Oh, I see. The pups have arrived. Clever girl. How many?" "2. One of each." "Clever girl." He stroked the dog. All right. Go back to them now." The dog was torn between loyalties, flattening her ears and glancing towards the door. "When were they born?" "Yesterday. She had them in Mr. Evelyn's room, on the chaise longue. She's taken a fancy to the young lady." Robert Copplestone looked bewildered. "What young lady?" "Who brought the letter from Mr. Evelyn." "Explain." "It's on the hall table. I'll get it." Robert drained the rest of his whiskey. Anne returned with the envelope. He slit it and read aloud. "Dear Father, Juno Marlowe needs your help. In my present state, I can't do much. I suspect you will find her rewarding, so over to you. Lovingly, Evelyn." "Is she here?" "Yes, I put her in Mr. Evelyn's room. It was the only room with the bed made up and the fire laid ready. She's ill, sir. Temperature 103. I had to do something quickly." "I must go and see." Robert made to rise. "Asleep." Anne pushed him back. "Been asleep on and off since I put her to bed. Come and have something to eat, or we'll have you ill, too." "In a minute, Anne. In a minute." Robert Copplestone read his son's letter again, quoting aloud. "In my present state, I can't do much." "Anne, do you think he knew?" "We all knew, didn't we?" Yes, we did." Robert sighed. "But we did not want to know. Oh, God, Anne. The doctor in London said he died in his sleep. His heart just stopped. It has been touch and go for years, but when it happens... His next-door neighbor found him. She said he seemed very tired that night, exhausted. Come along, sir. Have some hot soup now." He made an effort. "I'll eat in the kitchen where it's warm. And where I won't be alone." He sat at the table where she laid a place. He said the funeral was quiet and quick. He did not want to be a nuisance. He left written instructions with our solicitor. Said the same thing to me some time ago. We could have some sort of service in the village after the war. What do you think? Yes, when... She did not go on. How could she say, "when we are used to his loss"? Now, eat. Hot toddy? If you will keep me company. She poured whiskey into tumblers, added water from the kettle. We are used to doing without lemon, she thought, as we must get used to doing without Evelyn. Curse this war. Outside the house, the wind rose. There was a spatter of rain against the window. Robert said, "Is the door of Evelyn's room open?" "Ajar." "I'll just peep in. All you'll see is the top of her head." "Let's hope Evelyn was right." "How, sir?" "Rewarding," he said. Dryly, Anne said, "He was a good judge of blondes." They mounted the stair together to peer through the open door of what so lately had been Robert's son's room. By the light of the fire, it was just possible to discern a head on the pillow. Juno slept, her face turned away from the door. On the chaise longue, the dog, Jessie, wagged her tail. Robert whispered, "This one's dark," and presently, as he got into bed, mulled over in his mind his son's suggestion of reward. Loud voices in the kitchen could be heard from the yard. Robert Copplestone crossed to the house, where a male voice was rising in plaintive crescendo. "'Tis not as if I'd asked to go. Some are silly buggers. 'Tis too much, I say, for one man to be milking 8 cows. Should have been more polite, like, to the land girl as was tried. She ain't no good, even boss said so. And I say 8 cows is too many for one man on his own, and you boys gallivanting off to dress up as soldiers." Robert wiped his feet on the mat. "Good morning, Anne, and John, Bert. What's up? Some sort of trouble?" "Come to say goodbye, sir. Dick and I are off tonight." "Of course you are. Well, good luck. We will hope to see you when you come home on leave, and... Bert, is something wrong?" "Morning, sir. No, sir. We was just considering the milking." "Yes? 8 cows, sir." "I can milk." 4 men and Anne turned to stare at Juno, and Juno, doing a double take, was staring at Robert. He hadn't died. He was here, alive. Had he been asleep when she... No, this one was older, stronger, frighteningly like. She drew in her breath. "I'm sorry. I could not help hearing. I'd like to help. I can milk a cow." "You must be Juno Marlowe." Robert took her hand. "I hope you feel better." He was smiling. "Yes, absolutely. Thank you." "Have you had breakfast?" "No, but please, Then we will have it together. There should be a fire in the library. I often eat there. That all right, Anne?" Grinning, Anne said, "Right away." From the yard, where Bert and John had removed themselves, there was a burst of raucous laughter. Anne grinned. "That put pay to them," she said, and was pleased to hear Robert laugh out loud as he led Juno away. Robert felt ridiculously nervous of this vulnerable-looking girl, yet she had made him laugh. He knelt on the hearthrug, rearranging logs in the fireplace. "I got back late last night," he said. "That should do now, don't you think? Are you an expert on log fires?" I had rather a longer journey from London than is usual after... Well, I won't bother you with that, with why I went." How could he tell this girl what he had felt as Evelyn's coffin slid into the furnace? He hardly knew himself what his feelings had been. "I felt numb," he said out loud. "Perhaps it's a good thing. Perhaps it's nature's anesthetic. What do you think?" Then, after the train journey, the station at Plymouth had been hit yet again, so we all walked along the line in the dark, with the Navy and Royal Marines helping people with their luggage. Everyone so cheerful. If it were not so serious, you'd think they were enjoying it, enjoying the war. "So I am somewhere near Plymouth," thought Juno. Robert was feeling in his pockets, frowning. "I've mislaid it," he muttered. "Confound it. Here comes Anne with our breakfast. Let me help." Robert surged towards the door, through which Anne was manoeuvring a large tray. "Just clear a space on the table. Coffee, toast, and scrambled eggs," Anne said. "Come on now, eat. There's more coffee. Should you want it, shout." Anne left the room. Robert poured coffee and handed a cup to Juno. "Bert is Anne's husband. She bullies us both." "Oh." "Bert lives at the farm. Anne lives here in the house." Robert shot Juno a glance. "They prefer it that way." A log shifted. A flame flared and lit Juno's face. "I hope you were warm enough in your room." It was lovely. It would be easier to talk to this man if he did not look so like his son. "I woke in the night and looked out at the silence." "And you saw? Heard?" "The stream. I want to follow it. Discover where it goes." "To the sea. It winds to the sea." What had Evelyn told her? Not much, it seemed. What had he said in the letter? Where was it? There would be an explanation in spite of his habitual brevity. Why can I not remember? Oh, I'm talking too much. I can't stop. But perhaps it will draw her out. What inspired you to suggest you can milk a cow? Because I can. The Johnsons and Murrays shared a farm run by a manager. Murray and Johnson land adjoined. On impulse, she asked the manager whether he would let her learn to milk, and he, perhaps sorry for her solitude, had deputed one of the men to show her. When Jonty and Francis returned, she had boasted of her new powers, and they had insisted on proof, hurrying her to the farm at milking time. It was dusk, she remembered, the cows in their shed lined up, waiting to be milked. Proudly, she had begun milking the first cow, but Jonty or Francis cried, "That's a very quiet cow, she doesn't count. Try another, try this one." And even when she was again successful, they went on teasing, pretending not to be satisfied. "You will never manage to milk the new beast Father bought last week. She's there, in that separate box. See if you can milk that one." In the half-dark, she had run her hand along the animal's flank, settled herself on her stool, reached for its udder. Arriving at that moment, the farm manager had yanked her out to fall on the cobbles. What he shouted at Francis and Jonty was unrepeatable, so violent was his anger. "Bloody fucking young fool, she might have been killed," was the mildest sentence. She had taken to her heels, and what she remembered with perfect clarity was the incredible softness of the bull's testicles when, feeling for a teat, she had held them in her hands. Watching Juno, Robert Copplestone thought, "My God, she looks sad. She is numb as I am." Then, seeing tears well suddenly up and stream unchecked down her cheeks, he thought, "Oh good, that's better. Let her weep. Wish I could," and reached for a handkerchief. But she was already finding her own tucked up a sleeve, taking a deep breath, blowing her nose, wiping her eyes, saying, "Sorry, I was remembering something. Should we not get on with the milking? Cows hate being kept waiting." Robert said, Yes, of course, I will take you down to the farm. You had better borrow a pair of Anne's boots. They will probably fit. And, you sure you've had enough breakfast? And, although it's thawing, the snow is still lying in places. And, my cows are Jerseys, I hope you like them. And, we'd better ask Anne to lend you an overall." As they walked down to the farm, Juno in Anne's 2 large boots, he said, "I'm talking too much," and was grateful when she said no. But all the same, he kept silent for several minutes, only asking, as he opened the farmyard gate, "How old were you when you learned to milk?" Juno said, "About 10. Yes, 10. Jonty and Francis had been 17. Suddenly, Juno asked, "What is the name of this place?" "Copplestone." "Of course, Copplestone. Like you, Copplestone. Oh, good." She laughed. "I brought you a letter. Did you get it all right?" "Yes, but I can't find it. Can you tell me what Evelyn said?" "No. He wrote something and stuck up the envelope. All I know is that he told me to give it to you." Juno frowned. "If he had meant me to post it, he would have stuck on a stamp, wouldn't he?" she queried anxiously. "You'm gonna keep those cows waiting till Michaelmas?" Bert shouted from the byre. "Or not?" "Not. We're coming," Robert yelled back. "On our way." "May I go in alone?" Juno's voice was gentle. Robert watched her back as she clumped across the farmyard. 1 or 2 of Evelyn's blondes had been dizzy. There had been one who was dumb. This girl was neither. Walking towards Bert, Juno wished she had not parted so abruptly from Robert, long-legged and comforting with a nice rumbling voice, a person she might, unlike her mother, be able to talk to without fear of verbal reprisal. But now here was Bert. He was short and broad and bow-legged. Juno said, "So, here I am. Tell me what to do." The sound of milk squirting into the pail was rhythmic. Juno leaned her forehead against the cow's flank, and the warm smell of cow, the rustle of hay, the shifting of hooves on concrete, engendered peace. Across the shed with his back to her, Bert was milking too. From time to time he growled at the cow he was milking, "Stand still, can't he?" whether she moved or not. Between them they milked 7 cows. The 8th, housed with her calf in a separate stall, rolled her eyes when Juno peered over the partition. Juno blew gently, puffing her breath towards the cow, who raised her head and stared. Sensing Bert behind her, Juno asked, "What time do you milk evenings?" "You coming again, then?" "Yes." "4:30, then." "Shall I sweep the stalls?" You leave him be. All right. Can he make butter? I can learn. Will he be staying then? I don't know. Huh. See you at 4:30 then. Juno was resolved not to smile. Would not say that she would love to stay or how much she had enjoyed herself. Can he carry the house milk up to Anne? I might just manage. Bert handed her a covered can. Don't spill her. There was no word of thanks. As she came up to the house, there was a commotion. Robert Copplestone was hurrying across the yard. He had changed into a dark suit and was humping himself into an overcoat. Garage doors stood open, a car ready. How did it go? Catching sight of her, Robert looked anxious but amused. The milking, was he rude? Just grumpy, guarded. Was that all? You must have made a hit. Robert exploded with laughter. Here, let me take that can. Oh, that's a great compliment. His own special can. Don't forget your hat. Anne handed him a bowler. Oh, God, Robert exclaimed, all this respectability. Do you think for 1 second the dead mind? Juno said, the undertaker's mind. Oh, bright girl, yes, of course. Robert hurried towards the car, got in, pressed the starter. Be here when I get back, he shouted as the engine started. Don't go, don't disappear, promise. He leaned out. Juno shouted, I said I'd help with the afternoon milking. But you will be here when I get back. Doubled up with laughter, Juno shouted, yes. Then as the car sped down the hill, what's going on? A friend's daughter's been killed in an air raid. Her father rang up, asked him to come to her funeral. Juno looked at Anne. Not the Café de Paris. How did you guess? His son's funeral yesterday and now this. It's all too much. She was a nice girl and pretty. Juno thought, one of the girls in the basement. One of the girls so eager to go dancing. What should I say? But Anne was talking. Here, give me that can. Coming out of the cold. You shouldn't be standing about. You're only just out of bed. And as she bustled Juno indoors, she said, I bet the old devil never thanked you. Juno said, but he did. He trusted me with the can. And the opportunity to say something about the girl was missed. Mr. Copplestone said that Bert is your husband. Ah, well, she said in a manner of speaking, he's right. We went through the formalities, but I didn't take to what goes with them. Bert and I cleave in different ways. Cleave is one of the words in the marriage ceremony. Cleave unto, that's what it says. But if you add a letter, you get cleaver, a thing which splits. That's what happened to us. We split. Juno said, oh. Is Mr. Copplestone married? Is there a Mrs. Copplestone? Didn't Evelyn tell you? No. Anne answered herself. He wouldn't. His mother died when he was tiny. He never knew her. She was spooning tea into the pot. They were so young, she said. Who was so young? Evelyn's parents. It's history now. It caused surprise at the time. There's still people who talk of shotguns, but it wasn't like that. They were 17. How old are you? 17. What did their families think? Said they were too young, of course. But they were glad to see them happy. I don't remember any great fuss. I suppose she was rich. No money had no bearing. Anne sounded censorious. Her family were Fabians, whatever that means. High-minded, something to do with not being in a hurry. But the young ones were. Anne put her cup down. More tea? No, thank you. Juno watched the older woman. Mr. Copplestone can't be more than 18 years older than Evelyn. Less. He boasts the child was conceived on his 17th birthday. Juno visualized Robert Copplestone at 17, comparing him with Francis and Jonty at the same age. In a similar situation, would the Johnsons and Murrays have been high-minded and pleased? She thought not. There would be no raised voices or light remarks, but a stiffening of lips, a closing of ranks, a calm and sensible solution to an awkward aberration, a ripple in otherwise well-ordered lives. She said, gosh, he was lucky. Driving slowly up the hill, Priscilla Villiers noted a female figure crossing Robert Copplestone's farmyard. Who's that? she called over her shoulder to a young man on the back seat. "You never told me Robert had got himself another land girl." Anthony Smith said, "I didn't know he had," his tone indicating that neither did he care. "I bet she's another of Evelyn's girls," said Priscilla Villiers. "What an amazing coat. She looks like a Cossack. I wouldn't call that suitable for a farm." "Looks elegant. Did Evelyn have a lot of girls? Why didn't he marry?" "He did not think it would be fair, his health being what it was, and now he's dead, he has proved right." "And his father, Robert, why didn't he marry again? He must have been drolly attractive." "Still is," said Priscilla. "I bet that was one of Evelyn's girls." Priscilla craned her neck to get a last look downhill. What an extraordinary get-up. She looked like a Cossack. "I wouldn't call that suitable to work on a farm. You're repeating yourself, Pris." "You mean I'm growing old?" No, no, no." Anthony was pained to have hurt. "I do not." But he had thought her old. In his 20s, 50 was a lifetime ahead. Priscilla brought the car to a stop outside the house, saying, "Well, here we are. Anthony, I really am hugely grateful for your work in the garden. I can't thank you enough." "But I've enjoyed it." Anthony got out of the car. "Loved it. Fresh air, country, kind company. Have you put the brakes on?" "Yes, Anthony, I have." "Just checking." Anthony walked ahead to push open the front door and shout, "Anne!" Hurrying across the hall, Anne called out, "Sorry, Mrs. Villiers, but you'd better not bring your dog in. Jessie might go for him. She's got her pups." "I know, Anne. I brought you some broccoli and some artichokes. Thought you might like them for soup." "Very windy things, but thank you." Anne took the basket of vegetables from Anthony. "You staying the night?" "Can't," said Anthony. "I have to catch the night train. I'm due at the Ministry of Fear in the morning. My leave's over. The war goes on." "But you've time for some tea." "Just. And I've left some clutter. I'll go and collect it." Anthony leapt up the stairs 2 at a time. "Anne, who is that girl I saw as we came up the hill?" Priscilla said. "She was wearing the most unsuitable clothes, looked like fancy dress." "Friend of Evelyn's. Arrived with a letter." "Oh, what's her name?" "Juno Marlowe." "Really? Never heard of her." "No, wait a minute. Wasn't there a girl called Marlowe at school with me? Violet Marlowe, a very bossy type, good at games. That's the one." "She's helping Bert. She can milk." "What a godsend." "Hope so. Arrived in the snowstorm with flu. She's all right now, a bit on the quiet side." "Did Anthony do a good job?" "Wonderful. Pity he can't stay longer. He's good company and an amusing gossip. Do you think he's—" Anne said, "What?" and poured boiling water into the teapot. Priscilla lowered her voice to a whisper. "Queer." Anne said, "All I'm concerned with is the work he's done in the garden. You don't take sugar, do you?" "Not since the war." Priscilla took the cup Anne proffered. "Thanks, Anne." "Was this girl who can milk a particular friend of Evelyn's?" Priscilla inquired. "Or just someone like Anthony, sent to help his father? Where did Evelyn find these useful people?" Anne said, "I have not asked." "Well, I hope this one suits Robert. How does she get on with Bert?" "He likes her." Anne was conscious of exaggeration. "My word, she must be quite something." "Ready?" Anthony came into the kitchen. "I don't want to miss my—" "I know, your train. I'm coming. What an old woman you are. We've plenty of time." Priscilla put down her cup. "Got everything?" "Yes." Anthony gulped the tea Anne handed him. He kissed her. "Will you say goodbye and thank you to Mr. Copplestone? Tell him I'll write." Standing, bareheaded in the drizzling rain, Robert Copplestone observed his old friends watching their only daughter being lowered into her grave. Their faces were bleak. "I say, just a minute. Could you help us?" The man was a stranger. Courteously, Robert said, "Of course, if I can." "We motored over, but we got lost. No signposts, you see. Do you know this part of the world?" Robert said, "Where are you trying to get to?" They told him. Pointing, Robert said, "Go down that road, turn right at the first crossroads, turn left, then second right, and you're on the main road. Go straight ahead." "Oh, sorry to be such a nuisance. Could you draw us a map?" Quickly, Robert drew a map on the back of an envelope. The rain was turning to sleet. The bereft father was miming to him to catch up, come to the house for a drink, give some comfort. "Don't go yet. Don't leave us alone." He thrust the map at them, broke into a run to catch up with his old friend. Who were those boring people? "No idea. Come into the house, say something to Lizzie, something to the boys. We're all numb. You'll know what to say. Oh, God, isn't this awful?" Robert said, "Yes, thank you." He could not refuse. He would miss his train. He must swallow his impatience. His old friend said, "The vicar tried to help, said we're all in God's hands." Robert said, "Terrible butterfingers." His old friend yelped with laughter. Hysteria not far off, they went into the house. The next day, at last on the station platform, waiting for his train, he thought he really must see what, apart from the suggestion that she might be rewarding, Evelyn had had to say about the girl. He reached into his coat pocket and cursed out loud, remembering the tedious couple who had made him draw a map on the back of an envelope, the envelope which held Evelyn's letter. It had been all right helping Bert milk the cows on that first day, but not any more. He resented her, showed it. "Let me help." Juno took the broom before he had time to resist. "I'm quite capable of sweeping out the cowshed." Bert exclaimed, "Nah," but she had the broom and had begun to sweep. He watched, aghast. And give the cows their nuts, and fill the hay racks. Had she not learned these things long ago, as the child who had hung about, filling in time, waiting for Jonty and Francis to come back from hunting, or fishing, or playing tennis? Hanging about like an unwanted puppy. "Mind your feet!" She was shaking with sudden, inexplicable fury. Bert raised his voice in high-tenored surprise. "I can't be having it. It ain't fitty." "What?" Juno faced him. "What isn't fitty? What is it?" she hissed, staring closely at the man's bristly chin. "Tell me." Bert stepped backwards. "God," he said later to Anne, "that little maid did frighten me. Her face was chort white and she didn't know she was crying." But he must not show his fear. "'Tis your coat," he exclaimed, his voice cracking. "You come pouncing into my farmyard and that thing, that's what ain't fitty. This is a farm. 'Tisn't Piccadilly." Juno said, "But it's all I have." Her rage drained away, leaving her spent. "Perhaps I should have nicked Mink. Would you have preferred that? Or Sable?" Then she turned away and raced up the hill. "So we had explanations," Anne said on Robert's return. "She said she was sorry something had snapped. She had no other coat, no clothes other than the few in her case." "What's this got to do with coats, clothes?" Robert interrupted. "They're in Canada by now. There was a houndstooth tweed Bert might have approved of, and oh God, she would apologize and be on her way as soon as possible. Those were her words." "On her way? Where to? Where is she now?" Robert straightened up. "In the bath. I must talk to her." Hastily, Robert swallowed his whiskey. "Damnation. Please, sir, take it easy." Anne watched him take the stairs 2 at a time. "She's bugger easy." He had reached the landing and was heading towards Juno's room. Along the upstairs corridor, she heard Robert knock, and again, louder. There was apparently no response. She heard him open the door and call, "Juno? Juno, it's me, Robert. May I come in? I have to talk to you." "Yes, now. Can you come down, please?" And Juno, faintly, "I'm just out of the bath. I haven't any clothes on." And Robert, "Then put on a dressing gown." And Juno, "I have no dressing gown." And Robert, loud again, "Don't prevaricate. Evelyn's dressing gown is hanging on the bathroom door. Put that on and buck up." In the library, Robert, standing with his back to the fire, looking down at Juno sitting upright in an armchair, small in Evelyn's dressing gown, pale, her hair damp, pushed back from her face, said, "Idiot that I am, I have lost Evelyn's letter, so you will have to tell me about yourself. All I can remember is that he said I would find you rewarding. So it's up to you to tell me what he said, what was in the letter." Juno said, "I didn't read the letter. He wrote it and licked the envelope and handed it to me. Sorry." Could you tell me how, Evelyn seemed when you saw him last? Dead. He had been dead. She couldn't possibly tell this man, Evelyn's father, that she had not even paused to close his son's eyes. He was drinking whiskey. He was wheezy, very wheezy, seemed exhausted. And he gave me some because I was frightened. There was a big raid going on. I'd never tasted it before. Juno began to shake. I have to go. Robert said, sit down, you're not going anywhere, and sat down himself. But Robert could not sit. He got up, and standing with his back to the fire, looked down at Juno. She looked small in the armchair, her frame almost lost in Evelyn's cashmere dressing gown, an extravagant garment bought on a whim, because I like the colour. And now the girl was wearing it, and Evelyn was dead. Robert cleared his throat. Are you warm enough? Oh, yes, thank you. Juno jerked upright. This is lovely, beautifully warm. I spoke abruptly just now. I would love you to stay, but if you're not happy, we could work something out. I will help if I can. Why else did Evelyn send you here? To begin with, should we not tell your family where you are? Or perhaps you've done that, written or telephoned while I was away. They must be anxious. Shrinking, Juno said, I have not written or telephoned. Your father? Robert persisted. Surely he's dead. Oh, I'm sorry. He went to prison. Juno sat up straight. He was a conscientious objector in 1914. Bully for him, Robert exclaimed. And your mother? Is she dead, too? Canada. She's gone to Canada, and she's taken all my clothes with her. That sounds a bit extreme. Well, that is why I was so offensive, so rude to Bert. I only have the coat he objects to. I raged at him. It had not been Bert. It was quite another pain. Loss, fear. She had snapped. I snapped, Juno admitted. I am sorry, and I think I shouted that I had stolen the coat. And did you? Robert was interested. This girl of Evelyn's was not at all like the others. Yes, I did. Juno looked Robert in the eye. Aren't you shocked that I stole the coat? It shows enterprise. I suppose you were cold. I was, very cold. But the cap, I didn't steal that. A sailor left it on his chair in the station buffet, so I appropriated it. Yes, that makes sense. I feel somewhat bereft of that commodity. Which of them had said that? I am somewhat bereft. She tried to remember, thinking back which of them had said, I am bereft. She strained to hear their voices. Was it Francis? It might have been either of them. Watching her, Robert thought, she's far away. Why not, he said rather loudly, stay here with Anne and me. Anne can fix you up with clothes. It is what Evelyn wanted, isn't it? What he suggested in his letter, the letter you brought with you. But you've lost it. Yes, but I know what it said. Robert could hear his son's voice. Someone you will like, who will help on the farm, who will love the place as we do, not a regulation land girl like the one you tried, who stuck to the rule book and didn't know a thing anyway. What I'm getting at, he said, is this. Will you do what Evelyn suggested, what Evelyn wanted for you, what I would of course very much like? Stay and help on the farm, and if you're happy, I can get you registered as my land girl. That should satisfy your mother. You'd better write. Juno said, I don't think, and Robert said, oh, but you must. I always worry if I don't know where Evelyn is. Oh, my God. What am I saying? Oh, my God. Death is so bloody hard to accept. And burst into tears. Juno watched him weep, and remembering his son, said nothing. For there was nothing consoling to say. Then, finding herself close to weeping too, she got up from the chair and stood beside him. When Robert blew his nose and wiped his eyes, she still said nothing, but was partially consoled when he said, Evelyn said in his letter that I would find you rewarding, and I do. Perhaps this was the moment to tell this man, Robert Copplestone, how little she had known his son. Juno moved back into the armchair to stare miserably into the fire. and chivvy her brain for suitable words, succinct phrases. Robert, bending, replenished the fire with logs, then sat too, afraid he had rushed the girl, said too much. Sneaking a glance at him, Juno thought, they are uncannily alike, but this one is taller, stronger, more alive. I must speak. She opened her mouth. Anne bustled into the room. Please, sir, both of you, come along and eat the supper which is spoiling in the kitchen. Obediently, Robert rose to his feet and pulled Juno up from her chair. Here we come. As they followed Anne towards the kitchen, he said, Juno tells me all her clothes have gone astray, Anne, and that she has no clothes coupons. What miracle can you come up with? I can lend her enough coupons for working clothes, gumboots and overalls, and cut down Evelyn's clothes to fit. In the semi-darkness of the hall, Robert drew in his breath, winced. Still with her back to him, Anne said, What's the difference? She's wearing his dressing gown. I can cut down shirts and trousers, can't I? What is the use of having learned tailoring if I don't use it? Tell her, sir, how I came to learn tailoring. She chuckled. What a realist you are. Robert recovered himself and then told, as they sat at supper, of how when Anne discovered that she did not care for the rumpy-pumpy that went with marriage, she removed herself to Bradford. There she studied tailoring for a year until, overcome by homesickness, she had come back to Copplestone House. Thus was Juno's moment to speak put aside, and Juno, munching, wondered what good it would do if she did speak. It was as they finished the meal that they became aware of the growling flight of German bombers, and almost simultaneously the thud of bombs falling in the valley. Robert exclaimed, The farm! They may hit the farm, scare the animals, and was out of the front door and running before either Anne or Juno got out of the kitchen. Anne shouted at Juno, Put some clothes on! Don't show a light, or let the dogs out! She slammed out of the door after Robert. Juno nipped up the stairs to dress, and then she too ran outside. In the yard, she had to accustom herself to the dark. A bomber was circling the valley, flying low. Taking the shortcut, she began to run downhill, but tripping over a tussock, fell headlong, wrenching an ankle. Getting up, she trotted on, unaware that she was bearing towards the wood. When the whistle and shriek of a descending bomb halted her in her tracks, she cowered down, hands over her ears, as it crashed into the wood 100 feet away. When the rustle, pattering, and creak of broken branches stopped, she got to her feet to listen, and hearing panting and whining nearby, made out the shape of dogs knitted together on the grass ride. Curiosity overcoming fear, she recognized Bert's old and decrepit sheepdog with its penis trapped in the aftermath of mating inside a collie bitch. As she approached, they came apart. The bitch shied away to bolt through the trees, while Bert's ancient animal slumped exhausted. As Juno crouched by the dog, she realized that the bomb had crashed, but there had been no explosion. Come along, it may go off yet. Get up, boy, come along. But the dog could not move. Juno was carrying the dog when Robert and Bert met her limping into the farmyard. Where have you been? You're hurt, Robert exclaimed. Juno said, I tripped and twisted my ankle. It's nothing. I found him by the wood. He was with a collie. They were sort of stuck together. I've never seen... They was mating. Bert let out a whoop. What sort of collie was it? Very pretty, black and white. She made off through the wood. Nipper collapsed, so I carried... Oh, the good dog. That'd be Tom French's bitch. Tom said my Nipper's too old for his bitch. We'll show him on us, boy. When she whelps with Nip's pups, he'll owe us the best of the litter. You my great dog, Nipper. Bert leaned down to caress the aged Romeo. From outside the group, Anne asked, What about the bomb, Juno? Where did it fall? Juno said, I don't know exactly, but I was quite frightened. Bert, pressing close to Juno, asked, You sure know what you saw? Sure the old dog was... Yes, I am certain. Bert, all smiles, assured her. Then you's welcome to come milkin', and I'll teach ye dairy work. Robert remarked, sotto voce, The raids made you a friend. Evelyn would love this. Keep still while I measure you. Stand on that stool so that I don't have to bend. Anne held a tape measure. Bending jips my back. Obediently, Juno mounted the stool. "When I have you measured, we'll go upstairs and see what we find in those cupboards and drawers." "What cupboards?" "Evelyn's cupboards. Haven't you looked? You're a funny one." It seemed like prying. Was the room always his? "Yes, he was born in it," Anne said. "It was his mother's and father's when the young things married. Evelyn was born in your bed." "Goodness." "Sir moved to the other end of the house when she died, and since then it's been Evelyn's." Anne wound up the tape measure. "Did she die in it?" "No, love, that room has nothing but happy memories. Don't move, I haven't measured your waist." "It's 20 inches. "It's 21 now, and you can get down." Anne led the way upstairs to open cupboards and drawers, pull out Evelyn's clothes, saying, "We can use this, and that will cut down." Juno said, "What was Evelyn's mother like?" "She was lovely, about your size, fair, blue eyes. Evelyn liked blondes, but he took after Sir." "Were they happy? Did you know her well?" "What they had was short, but as good as you'll ever get. They were the happiest of young creatures." "But she died when Evelyn was born?" "Soon after. They were only 17, and Evelyn was 17 when he lied about his age to get in the war. Sir was already in it. Evelyn did not want to be left out. Such a bitter waste." Poor Evelyn. Anne had loved him, known him from little baby to wheezy man. "I did not know him well," Juno said cautiously. "Not really." "Few people did, love." Did Robert not want to marry again?" Anne laughed. "Not so you'd notice, though there's a few who tried to catch him." "And Evelyn?" "Said it wouldn't be fair on any girl to marry a man with rotten lungs." "Did he not tell you?" Anne looked sharply at Juno. "Still worried about your waist?" But Juno was checking her waist with the tape. "It's 21, as I told you. Must be our country air." But Juno was not listening. They had all been in the Murray's house playing ridiculous games. It had been Christmas. There had been a prize for the smallest waist. Her mother's had been 24. Mr. Sontag's waist had been huge, and so had Jaunty's and Francis's father's. Juno remembered the laughter. Jaunty and Francis were slender young men, but neither could compare with hers. Their mothers had declined to compete. Remembering their voices, Juno was suddenly consumed with rage. "She is only a child. She is not yet grown. She doesn't count." Juno tasted bile. She had never counted. They were determined she should not. To them she was an incubus. Anne said, "What's the matter? Did I say something?" Juno, recovering herself, said, No, of course not. It's nothing. I just remembered something." Anne, looking quizzical, said they had done enough for the moment, and to come down to the kitchen for tea. Then would Juno feed the hens and shut them in for the night against the foxes? And Juno said of course, and that she was happy that Bert was now teaching her how to separate cream and make butter. While inside she was screaming, "I am sick of being reminded. When shall I stop remembering? When shall I forget?" Part of the furniture, side 3. "Come up the hill with me," Robert called. "We can see what's going on from the top." He helped Juno into her coat, watched her pull on the woolen cap. "Even though there's nothing we can do..." Robert left his sentence unfinished. It's impossible to sleep if one goes to bed with the war so near. For nights, after the bombs had dropped near the farm, the raids on Plymouth had raged relentlessly. From the hilltop, Robert and Juno would see the sky glow red from the burning city, hear the aircraft guns, watch the searchlights finger the sky. This hill was Emma's and mine. Robert's voice was angry. Our sky was full of stars. Look at it now, streaked with death. Juno said, "Tell me about Emma. Tell me." The texture of Emma's skin, the taste of her spit, the flavor of sex. Robert thought back to a period of such transcendent happiness that every joy and sorrow that came later was paid for in advance. Could he possibly tell this strange girl? "We were happy," he said. "We were in love. We made Evelyn." They reached the top and stood above the tree line. There was a view for miles. Robert thought, "She's so young. But we were, too. How can I tell what she has learned? How can I get her to speak?" Robert said, "Look at it, Juno," and pointed towards the city. "Even destruction is beautiful in its way. Isn't the sky a formidable color?" He remembered that Evelyn had written, "There was a strangely beautiful glow over Dockland." "Did you, too, see beauty in the raids in London? Tell me what you saw." Juno said, "I saw the moon, the cracks in the pavement, the streak of light from an opening door." She forbore to mention that she had been consumed with love and grief. Robert could remember his Emma, but would he sniff the air as she did, half hoping to catch a remembered whiff of Francis's hair or Jonty's sweat as they kissed and petted her after that unheeding violence, or hear their voices exclaiming that they had not meant to hurt? Had Robert, she wondered, hurt Emma? And what had Emma had to say? She was in half a mind to ask Robert about this, but he had grabbed her arm and was shouting, "Here's another lot. Here they come again. Look, Juno. You can see the black cross." Indeed, she could see the cross as a German bomber zoomed low down the valley, chased by a bowfighter with its guns spitting fire. Juno heard herself yell, "Look out! Look out! Oh, God, it's hit!" as the plane lurched sideways, appeared to pause, then slid sideways into the sea. Then she was on her knees, vomiting, with Robert holding her head, his arm round her waist, saying, "What a fantastic sight! The poor devil looked like a mallard shot over the marsh," while the bowfighter circled in triumph before flying off. As they ran downhill, Robert held her hand, and Juno cried out, "What if we had known someone in that plane?" Robert answered, "I know, I know." She shouted, "And you find the sky beautiful." He answered, "But it is beautiful." As they got close to the house, she blurted, "What did you do when Emma died?" Robert answered simply, "I went to university and tried to grow up, tried to forget." She said, "And did you?" Robert, opening the door, answered, "Of course not." Then he began telling Anne about the German plane, and that Juno had been sick and would she mind her while he went to telephone, report the crash. Anne, drawing Juno close to the fire, helping her off with her coat, said, "Well, that's one good job by our lot, which Lord Haw-Haw won't be boasting about. Something cheering to put in your letter to your mother," and was quite huffed when Juno shouted, "It was a terrible thing. It was in no way good. I agree with my father." Riding down the hill to the village on errands for Anne, Juno considered the letter so long overdue which she must write to her mother. Dismounting at the post office and tying the pony to a rail, she found a woman was standing beside her, holding out a hand, saying, "I'm Priscilla Villiers, a friend of Robert's, and you are Juno Marlowe." Juno shook hands, said, "That's right. Stand still, Millicent." She soothed the pony. "Such an absurd name for a pony." Priscilla patted the animal's neck. "But that's Robert. He named a goose after another girl he had an affair with, and Millicent's father so disapproved of Robert." Juno said, "Oh," wondering whether there might be a hen or turkey called Priscilla. Priscilla, grinning, said, No, there are no Priscillas in Robert's farmyard, no such luck. But you may have noticed a sow called Eleanor, and that a lot of the cows have names. Then she said, I gather from the grapevine that you were with him when he saw the bomber shot down. Juno said, It was horrible. I was sick. I know, it doesn't bear thinking of, but at least it was quick, and they had been bombing Plymouth. Juno said, That makes it no better. And Priscilla said gently, So you take after your father. A brave fellow, I've always thought. I knew your family. I was at school with your Aunt Violet. How is she? Juno said, Belligerent, working for the Red Cross. Priscilla said, Your father, by all accounts, was a gentle fellow. I hardly knew him, but know of him. Courageous, stuck to his convictions. I dare say Violet is ashamed of him. Juno said, She is. Silly old thing. He was quite a friend of my husband's at one time. That's the connection. Nice man. Juno said, Oh, feeling pleased. And what does your mother think? Priscilla was smiling, friendly. I haven't told her. I was supposed to join her in Canada, and I don't want to. And now it's quite awful. It's all so difficult. Her voice rose. Oh, God, she exclaimed. I don't know why I'm telling you all this. I'm worried stiff. Priscilla said, No doubt your mother is, too. Juno, almost shouting, cried, Of course, I don't know what or how to tell her. Priscilla said, My dear girl, don't tell me you're incapable of concocting a lie. Send her a cable. Come along, I'll help you. There's an art in this sort of thing. One has to remember later what one said. Juno said, Gosh. It was Priscilla who composed the message which apprised her mother of her whereabouts and occupation, and stated in essence that the situation had come about via an introduction from her aunt. Only twice did Priscilla ask a question. First, for her mother's address, and secondly, murmuring, how had it come about that Evelyn knew Violet? And before Juno could voice a yea or nay, said, Not that it matters, for Evelyn knew everybody, didn't he? And Juno had humbly agreed to yet another of the many half-truths assumed on her arrival. So that night she wrote, as Priscilla said she must, a long letter to her mother. She wrote that she liked working for Mr. Copplestone, that a friend of Aunt Violet's who had been at school with her lived not far away, and pleased not to worry as she was busy and well. She was fortunate to have found such a useful job. Then she sent her love and best wishes to Mr. Sontag. Mrs. Villiers had been right to concoct the half-truth which was cabling its way to Canada. Her mother could not expect intimacy, must be used to silence and evasion. Juno considered her parent with dispassion. They had never been close, had lived without demonstrations of affection. She had no recollection of being petted, and kisses had been sparse. She would never have been able to speak with her mother as she had with Mrs. Villiers, who, loquacious and loose-tongued, had elicited in a few brief minutes a précis of her life. Her mother, Juno knew, had never wanted to have a child, but if she had to have one, would have wanted a son. Once, in a moment of unguarded irritation, she had told Juno this, and Juno had not felt hurt but sympathetic, for it was clear her mother was an unhappy person who hated being poor, who would never be like Mrs. Johnson or Mrs. Murray, neither of whom had married the wrong man and had the wrong child. Robert watched Juno jogging ahead on the pony, and was glad he had asked her to come on his pre-breakfast tour. Normally he relished his solitude, viewing his land and stock, planning the day's work. But it was nice, he thought, to have company for once, all the more so since Juno did not chatter. "Who taught you to ride?" Robert addressed Juno's back. "A neighbour's groom." "Oh." "I helped to exercise the horses." "Our fathers say we may have horses and hunt, provided they're properly exercised and cared for in term time. We've thought it out. Jennings shall teach you, then you can ride while we're at school," Francis had said. "And help in the stables. It's a known fact," Jonty had added, "that little girls love hanging around stables and are horse mad." And so it had been that she had learned to ride, groom, muck out, and fill hay bags. It did not last long, she said. "What didn't?" "The riding." "Why not?" "They sold their horses when they were old enough to drive a car." "They?" The neighbours. Their family owned the farm where I learned to milk. She did not want to relive the disappointment, the sight of the empty stable when the horses were sold in favour of an MG. Did the horses you learned to ride have names? Juno said, I expect so. I don't remember, which was untrue. Aware of sounding rude, she said, When I met Mrs. Villiers, she told me you named all your animals after friends. Is that true? Robert laughed. Yes, girls. Is Jessie named after someone special? Not Jessie. There's been a long line of Jessies going back to my childhood, all canine. Come on, shall we ride to the top through the wood? At the top, Robert reined in to gaze at the familiar view. West towards the Lizard and Land's End, and east towards Plymouth. All quiet today, he said. No bombers. Look, quick, there's a peregrine. My God, those birds are wonderful. Look, Juno, see it jink. Look, do you see it? But Juno was sliding off the pony, doubling over to be sick. Robert got off his horse and watched Juno heave. Then she wiped her pale face with her handkerchief and said, Oh, sorry about that. I must have picked up some bug. I felt sick yesterday morning when I was milking. Robert asked, And the morning before? Juno said, Come to think of it, yes. How funny. Robert said, I don't think you have a bug. It's a baby. Juno said, What? Juno, you are pregnant. I'm what? She stared at him. Going to have a baby. But I don't like babies. I know nothing about babies. What on earth makes you think I am? What did you say? Pregnant. You have morning sickness, he said. How on earth would you know? My wife and I had a baby. Oh, yes, of course, Evelyn. But that was ages ago. The symptoms remain the same. But how can I? I don't know anything. I don't like... Robert said, Hasn't your mother told you anything? My mother, Juno said, never even told me about the curse. Oh, Robert. Robert said, Having a baby can be fun. And Juno said, Who for? She glanced into his friendly eyes, then looked away. Robert murmured, There hasn't been a baby at Copplestone for 40 years. But Juno was staring at the sea and did not hear him. It's all right. You can't conceive the first time, one of them said. Had she made some feeble protest? Then the other said, I believe that's an old wives' tale. Give him credit. They believed what happened to suit, and she had gone along with it. For her mother, when tackled, had backed away from discovering life for her daughter. Juno said, Perhaps you could tell me a bit more. Tell me, for instance, what happened to your wife, Emma. Ah. I'm ignorant. Juno thought she had better not say desperate. Robert said, Let's sit down. Sit with your back to that rock. I will tether the horses. He leant back against the rock and said, How much has your mother told you? Precious little. I'll begin at the beginning, then. Please. Robert coughed. Emma and I discovered how to make love. You with me? So far. How lovely Emma had been when they made love that first time on a rainy day, tumbling and rolling in the bed, which Juno slept in now, and all the other times that magical summer, indoors and out here on the cliff to the sound of the sea and cry of gull. But one must stick to the essence. So we made love, and after a month, 6 weeks perhaps, Emma started to feel sick in the morning. And, for Robert, in turn, was staring out to sea, silent, remembering. Was he remembering that Emma had enjoyed it? Lucky Emma. Go on. What happened next? Oh, yes. Well, after a while, she stopped feeling sick and felt very well. Good. And? And the baby grew inside her as yours will in you, and after 9 months, Evelyn was born. Was she pleased? We were both tremendously pleased. Ecstatic would be the right word. There must be more to it than that. Oh, there is. There's the moment when the baby first moves. That's magical. Moves? Where? Inside the body? Yes. Good Lord. And I remember she wanted to pee pretty often. She found that a bit of a bore, and she got pretty big, enormous, actually. And that's about it. The baby grows into a tiny human being. Does it hurt when the baby's born? I'm afraid it does. But Emma managed it and had a lovely baby, and you married and lived happily ever after. Juno had angry tears spurting, felt herself shaking. But I am not. I do not know what to do, or where to go, or anything. Robert thought ever after was pretty marvellous. I was lucky to have even those few months. I know that, and I must try to hang on now Evelyn has died. But blast the girl, why is she shouting so? He was suddenly angry. You stay here, you little fool. That's what you do. There's no need for you to go anywhere. Anne and I can look after you. He stood up, furious. Unless you want to be shipped off to Canada to join your mother, though the shipping lines probably draw the line at pregnant girls in wartime. Anyway, is that what you want? Canada? Juno exclaimed. I couldn't possibly. No. Well, then. Robert sat down again, his anger diminishing. Juno said, What will your neighbours say? Robert said, Fuck my neighbours. And observing Juno's startled expression, they are rarely surprised by anything at Copplestone. Juno said, I believe you mean it. Mean I can stay? I do. I'm not married, she prevaricated. I know that. I shall be a nuisance, a burden, a bore. A nuisance and a burden, probably, but not a bore. Look, there goes the peregrine. See it? Yes, he is beautiful. Oh, Robert, thank you. Robert said, Time enough when we've had the baby. We? I intend to enjoy it, and I propose that you do too. Come on. There's nothing to cry about. Your kindness. I'm crying about that. Robert said, Don't embarrass me. You'll upset the horses. He thought, I should not have been so cavalier. I should have left this to a woman. How is it possible, he heard himself say, for you to be so ill-informed? I always told Evelyn everything. Juno said, Gosh. Then, hesitantly, she said, Might I ask you? Ask away. Robert stretched his legs. You say it grows inside and moves about. Yes. But how does it get out? Robert swallowed. Juno, he said gently, the baby gets out where it went in, when you made love. It comes out head first between your legs. But how could it? Babies are huge. Do you mean to say... My God, you must be joking. I'm not. Is it possible? Now she turned to look at him. Are you seriously telling me... Yes. No wonder it hurts. What a fix I'm in. It's not a fix. It's a child, not an illness. It's something to be happy about. Happy? I'm not happy. I'm angry. Ah. For being such a stupid, gullible fool. She had raised her voice to shout, and the horses laid back nervous ears. What on earth will my mother think now? Juno shouted. She was shaking with rage. It'll wreck her life, she cried. Shatter her conventions. Placidly, Robert said, There is the Atlantic Ocean between you. So? So why tell her? Why spoil her happiness? Why not just shut up? But that would be lying to her. Not exactly. And surely you've lied to her before. Well, yes. Then Juno said, I get the impression you quite want me to have this baby. Robert murmured, It will give us all something other than the war to think about. And Juno thought, other than Evelyn, but did not voice it. I can't just sit here. Juno sprang to her feet. I should be late for milking, and Bert will revert to being testy. Robert watched her unhitch Millicent, swing into the saddle, and clatter off down the hill. Slowly he got up, untied his horse, and followed at a sedate pace. At the house there was no sign of Juno. Robert went into the house, calling, "Anne!" Anne should have been the person to tell Juno she was pregnant. It was a woman's job. "I'm here," Anne's reply came from the depths of a cupboard. "What is it?" "Have you seen Juno?" "Gone down to milk the cows. What's the matter?" "Oh, God!" Robert was hurrying out to where they could see Juno loping down the hill to the farm. "I can't think what possessed me. What I have said may be irreparable. I'm an idiot. I should have left it to you. It would have come so much better from you." "What would? What's going on? What's all this about?" "I made her weep. Her tears gushed. Oh, dear God." Anne said, "She isn't weeping now." Juno had reached the bottom of the slope where the ground levelled out and was turning cartwheels. Anne said, "Whatever have you done to her?" "Ah, here comes the army. They rang up after you went out. It's about the bomb in the wood." Robert said, "Oh, bloody hell." With hand politely outstretched, he went to greet his visitor, who, stepping out of his car, followed by his sergeant, was introducing himself. "Captain Lazenby, sir, bomb disposal. Your ARP reported your bomb, and I've come to blow it up, sir." The procedure disrupted the working day, for cows, horses, sheep, and pigs had to be moved right away from the farm. The windows of the farm and cottage opened in case of blast, and the whole area roped off for the explosion. This in itself was anticlimactic, only really upsetting the rooks. In silence, they sat at the table, all of them tired. Robert said, "So that was all very exciting," not enjoying the silence. Tartly, Anne said, "We should be grateful for bad German craftsmanship. There might have been no Juno." Juno sipped water, swallowed, and glancing sidelong at Robert, murmured, "And no baby." Meeting Anne coming out of the village shop, Priscilla Villiers stood in her way. "Oh, Anne, I am glad to see you. I've had a letter from Anthony. He's coming in 2 weeks' time to work my garden, and he's bringing a friend, Hugh Turner. I thought you would like to know. They could come on to you when they finish with me. Of course, he should have contacted Robert, but he seems rather to have adopted me." Anne said, "So it seems. And you have wonderful Juno, such a pretty girl. Is that arrangement working?" Anne said, "Yes." "I've not seen her for months, except in the distance. Has she heard from her mother? Was she upset by the change of plan?" Anne said, "Not so you'd notice." "Oh, it appears she got married." "It slipped out," Anne later told Juno. "The woman's such a gossip, it's infectious." They were sitting at supper. Priscilla said, "Goodness, then there's hope for us all. But what does Juno think about it?" Anne said, "It came as no surprise. I must be getting on. I'll give your message to Mr. Copplestone." "Oh," Priscilla said, following Anne from the shop, "I see you have Millicent pulling a trap. What a good idea. I wish I had a pony trap. It would save so much petrol. Let me help load." Priscilla came forward to snatch at Anne's parcels. "You have baby wool here." Priscilla peered into the parcels. "Is somebody having a baby? Not John's wife again? They have 3, haven't they? Surely that's enough." "No." "Then who?" Priscilla persisted. "I didn't answer that," Anne told Robert and Juno. "Millicent chose that moment to tread on her foot." "Which is what her namesake would have done. Those 2 girls never got on." Robert was amused. "Poor Pris. She loves to know other people's business." Anne said, "She certainly does." But Juno surprised them. "I don't mind her prying. She helped me with the cable to my mother, and that's given me a happy breathing space." Robert said, "Happy?" Flushing, Juno answered, "I don't believe I was ever so happy before." Possibly the day would come when she would be able to tell Robert how happy she was, but sitting at supper that evening, she was unable to elaborate. Juno got up from the table to help with the dishes. That evening, when she had come up the hill from the farm, pausing to sit on the seat in the porch, pull off her boots and look at the view, she had felt the first quickening of her child, a secret intimation of life. Juno put her arms round Anne's thick waist as she stood at the sink. Her bare arms bubbled with suds. "Did anybody ever call you a saint?" She squeezed the older woman's thick middle. Anne said, "Don't be daft. You nearly made me drop the pie dish." "And Robert, the Seigneur of Copplestone?" Juno squeezed harder. "Oh, that one needs his head examined. Now let me go, girl. Get a drying cloth, or we'll be here all night." "So who is the father?" Priscilla came up to Robert as he stood by the gate of the hayfield. The hay had been cut, loaded onto wagons, tossed up to the rick, which now stood at the side of the yard, the result of 4 days' hard work in blazing sun. Bert and Juno had gone to their milking, John to the walled garden to water his vegetables. Anthony and Hugh stretched aching limbs as they watched the horses drink at the trough before letting them loose in the field. Robert swung the gate towards him. "I should say 4 or 5 months. It's no secret, is it, even under that loose shirt? Was it one of Evelyn's or one of yours? The shirt?" "Evelyn's." "So who?" "Observant." "It's obvious, Robert. One can't help but notice. So?" "I don't know, Priscilla." "You don't know? Haven't you asked?" "No." "Honestly, Robert, do you mean to tell me—"
"I wasn't telling you anything, Priscilla."
"Robert, is that girl going to have a baby here at Copplestone?"
"Looks like it."
"Robert, you're mad." Robert laughed.
"Are you staying for supper?"
"If I'm invited, and I take it—" Priscilla returned to the attack.
"Priscilla, you can take it whatever way you please, but I would be grateful if you would curb your curiosity and, if necessary, choke."
"My goodness, Robert, you can be nasty. All right, I won't ask her. Are you sure, Robert, that you're not losing your marbles?"
"No. Let me see whether I can find you a drink before supper," Robert suggested more amiably. "We have masses of rough cider, if you can make do with that."
Priscilla accepted a tumbler of rough cider, a drink she abhorred. Presently, drinking some more, she joined loudly in the conversation at supper, which veered towards the namesakes of Robert's farm animals: the cart horses Horace and James, the pony Millicent, the sow Eleanor, and cows with rather grandiose names such as Constance, Victoria, Elizabeth, and Maud. "Horace and James were Robert's uncles," Priscilla informed Hugh, "but it's the girls you should be interested in. They're much more amusing. They were all Robert's girlfriends at one time or another. We thought for a while he was serious about Millicent, but in the end she married a merchant banker. Constance, Victoria, Elizabeth, and Maud came and went after raising expectations. They married masters of hounds, people in the Foreign Office, gents in the city, didn't they, Robert? One still comes across them shopping in Fortnum's or Harrods. Then there was Eleanor. She seemed a serious proposition, not only sound, but sexy. I rather liked Eleanor. In fact, I believe it was I who introduced you."
"True." Robert watched Priscilla drink her rough cider. "You are going to have a terrible head in the morning," he said amiably.
Priscilla cried, "Oh, I know, makes me talk too much, say things I regret, but all those girls, every which one, they fell in love with him, but oh dear me, he is not the marrying kind. He went to bed with them and that was it, their quota, their lot, and only their memory lives on in his farmyard. Oh gosh, I shall regret saying this, but they all said the same thing in later life. Having an affair with Robert spoiled them for everyone else." Sitting at the end of the table, Anne said, "You've forgotten the turkey called Priscilla, Mrs. Villiers. We ate her." And Robert, laughing, said, "Pris, I think I should drive you home." Robert crossed Priscilla's garden and set off across the fields. When one was young and making love with Priscilla, one would not have imagined putting her to bed drunk and solo in middle age. Robert chuckled as he walked. He had had a long day, but he felt fresh, good for a swim in the cove before bed. He quickened his pace, striding across the fields towards the cliffs. Reaching the cove, he paused to look down. There was someone down there, a figure walking by the stream as it fanned out across the little beach. A naked girl. Juno. Robert squatted back on his haunches. What to do? She looked white in the moonlight, and her hair very dark, as was the pubic shadow between her legs. She walked across the sand to the sea, waded out, dived, swam slowly and luxuriously into the moon's path. Robert watched. He could not join her. She was naked. Was she safe? She was swimming far out. He watched the lazy movements of her legs and arms in the clear water, her hair trailing like seaweed. He had been aware that she bathed, but had not taken in that she bathed alone. Fool! He should have warned her. Ah, she was turning back, floating now on her back, looking up at the cliffs. If he moved, she might see him, be startled. He froze. Reaching the shallows, she waded ashore, stood squeezing water out of her hair, brushing drops off her arms and legs, smoothing her curved stomach, walking slowly up the beach. He imagined her footprints. In the shade of the cliff, she pulled on knickers, trousers, and shirt, while he, letting breath out in a long sigh, watched. She had her clothes on and was unhitching Millicent. She had ridden here. She put her foot in the stirrup, swung onto Millicent's back, disappeared, the pony's hoofbeats diminishing. Robert felt a fool. He could not tell her he had watched her swim naked. He could not warn her without giving himself away, a voyeur. She had looked beautiful, and he had lost his wish to swim. He felt very tired and in need of his bed, but reaching the sand, he changed his mind. The line of Juno's footprints led to the water. Soon they would be gone. Robert stripped off his clothes. Juno's feet were narrow, he observed. The weight of the child made her heels imprint the sand firmly. The indentations from her toes were slight. Adjusting his stride, Robert paced towards the water, and reaching it, waded in as he had watched the girl do. Waist deep he dived, as she had done, and swam out. Floating on his back, he looked up at the cliff, from which minutes before he had watched. Resting in the water, he tried to empty his mind of immediate thoughts and all memories past, to let the sea hold him, rock him, soothe him, while he persuaded himself to blank out. But his head was crowded by the minutiae of the day. The day had gone smoothly, each person willing and helpful. Only Priscilla had struck a jarring note. He should not have plied her with rough cider and made her so drunk she had to be put to bed. Floating in the moonlight, Robert remembered there had been a similar scene when, discovering her normally steady-as-a-rock husband had been unfaithful, she had come to him for consolation. He had plied her with whiskey, taken her home, and put her to bed. But on that occasion, rather drunk himself, he had joined her in the bed. There had been a brief sexual conjunction. He had all but forgotten. But Anne had recalled a turkey eaten. In spite of himself, Robert chuckled. Juno had looked puzzled. One would not forget an encounter with Juno. This thought struck Robert a stunning blow. He swam violently out from the land, away from his thoughts, until exhausted he paddled back to regain the beach where the tide had come up, and obliterated all but the last of Juno's footprints. Priscilla prowled the cool hall, looked in at the library, opened the doors of the drawing room, inspected the dining room, and made her way to the kitchen. "Anne, I have bought a package for Juno from her aunt. It's from her mother." Anne said, "Fancy that. Well, well," irritating Priscilla by her tone, and as Robert came in from the yard, "Here's Mrs. Villiers. She's brought a parcel for Juno from her aunt." Robert, deadpan, said, "I take it you sleuthed in the telephone book on your trip to London. Could not resist." He pecked Priscilla's cheek, putting her on the defensive. "I thought I would look her up." Priscilla plucked up courage. "We were at school together. I found myself passing her house. I popped in, and wasn't it lucky? She had this package for Juno from her mother and had no idea where to send it. So she was delighted to entrust it to me," Priscilla babbled, "to bring it down to Juno." Priscilla paused to draw breath. Neither Anne nor Robert said anything. Can you believe this? When I was leaving, she apologized for dropping me from the hockey team. Did I say she was captain of hockey? She is a big noise in the Red Cross. She made me feel inadequate with my tiny contribution to the WVS down here. Robert said, "And you told her her niece Juno is having a child?" "Well, yes, I suppose I did, en passant, as it were." "And she expressed delight?" Priscilla said, "I can't say she did." Robert said, "Can you never keep your great nose out of other people's business?" A query which Priscilla failed to answer, for at that moment Juno came into the kitchen with a rush of dogs, and Priscilla was able to hand over the package and explain its provenance. Juno exclaimed, "How wonderful! I believe my mother has sent back my clothes. How absolutely super!" She tore open the package. "Oh, look, my houndstooth coat, jerseys and shirts and a skirt, just what I need. How lovely! Oh, look, I nearly missed this, a letter." Slitting the envelope with her thumb, she began to read. "I hope she's happy. I hope she's all right." Juno read the letter twice, then put it back in its envelope. Priscilla said, "Good news, I hope, from across the Atlantic." Juno said, It's just rather difficult to take in. Across the Atlantic, my mother's having a baby. A little brother or sister for you, she says. I didn't know people that old could." Oh, my. Robert, why are you laughing?" Raising an astonished voice, she said, "She's practically 40. How on earth? Anne, you're laughing too. What's so hilarious?" Anne remarked that life did not stop at 40 in her experience, but she stifled her laughter. Then brightly Priscilla said, "Well, I must be off." Robert said, "I will see you out, Pris." As they left, Juno called after her, "I suppose you told my Aunt Violet about my baby?" And Priscilla admitted, "Actually, yes. I had taken it, she knew." Rather stiffly, Juno remarked, "She will prefer the legit relation in Canada," adding under her breath, "to its nephew or niece." On the doorstep, Robert said, "You nosy, tactless bitch." Priscilla said, "How was I to know?" Getting in her car, she exclaimed with a bubble of laughter, "I believe you're in love with the girl, Robert." As she started the engine, he said, "A mismatch of generations, wouldn't you say?" slamming shut the car door, cutting off, but still hearing her query, "Discovered who the father is yet?" as she put the car in gear. When Robert got back to the kitchen, Juno had disappeared with her package, and Anne was mixing something in a bowl. Belligerently, she said, "Decided when to harvest, have you?" Mildly, Robert answered, "Yes, next week," and sat down at the table. Presently, he said, "You're angry with Priscilla. She is a tactless busybody, but she has a good heart, Anne, and I want to discuss Juno with you. Stop that a minute and sit down." Reluctantly, Anne said, "Go ahead." Robert said, "I wanted her to see a specialist, but she refuses. Do you think I should insist?" Anne said, "What power have you?" "You mean what rights?" Robert frowned. "Rights?" "That's what I mean." Anne looked him in the eye. "Ah, I stand corrected. None. I had not thought. I am nothing." Looking into Anne's honest little eyes, he asked, "You think I have imagined too much?" Anne nodded, pursing her mouth. "Then what do we do?" "Book her in for the birth in the cottage hospital." Disconcerted, Robert protested. "But I had imagined the child would be born in this house, and Anne, we must plan for later. She has her room and bathroom. What about a nursery? We have plenty of rooms." Anne said, "You seem to assume that she'll stay on." "Good God," Robert shouted, "where else would she go? And what about cradles and things? We must be practical. What else does she need? I seem to remember a vast pile of nappies when Evelyn was a baby." Anne said, "There's no shortage of cradles. There are 2 in the attic, yours and Evelyn's." "Oh," she said as Juno came into the room, "we were just speaking of you." "We were saying," Robert sprang forward and pulled out a chair,
Sit down, dear girl. We were saying that it's about time we made provision for your baby. We have to make a nest and line it.
Juno said, "What I can't make out is why you are so wonderfully kind. Nobody in my life has ever behaved like you. I'm not in the habit. It shatters me."
Robert said, "Then stick to the practicalities. Where can I buy nappies, Anne?" Anne said, "Almost anywhere." "Then what else? What do babies need?"
"Would you mind her using the shawls?"
"Shawls?
"Cashmere? Your mother's? They're all there. They were used for you and Evelyn both. Would you mind?"
Why should I? They're not sacred. What else does she need?"
"I done a bit of knitting."
"Show us."
Anne opened a dresser drawer. These. She laid sets of tiny jackets and leggings in front of Juno.
"Might be useful."
Juno put her arms round Anne and hugged her. "How can I thank you?"
"No need. That's those, then.
"But there are some things—" Anne's expression was curious.
"Never been used."
Setting a chair against the dresser, she climbed up and reached for the top drawer, from which she drew a brown paper parcel. "It's some things I sewed once," she said. "Fashions change, but it's good flannel, never worn. But if you think not, I shan't mind." She opened the parcel and pushed it across the table to Juno, who lifted out 6 little nightdresses beautifully stitched. Juno said, "They're absolutely beautiful." "Then I'd like you to have them, please. They were meant to be used, and now," she said, "if you've nothing better to do, Juno and Sir, will you stop cluttering my kitchen?" Robert led Juno to the terrace and said,
"Sit down, look at the view, while I catch my breath."
Juno did as he asked. Looking across the garden to the stretch of the moor, the farm and the ripe corn in the valley, while the child inside her kicked against its confines. Beside her, Robert let out a long sigh. "Oh, the poor woman. We never guessed." Juno looked at him, turning sideways to stare. Robert said, "We were so full of our own joy, Emma and I. Why Anne lit off to Bradford, nobody really knew. She never spoke of her time away. She moved into the house to work. We got the impression she had not been happy. But we were absorbed in our own happiness we did not question. And like you, she was no talker. But I see it all now. She sewed those lovely clothes for her own baby."
"Must have done."
"Lost it? Miscarried? Born dead?" "It was Bert's." Robert said,
"I imagine so. One can't ask. Too late now. This is her way of telling."
"She loved Evelyn," Juno said.
"And she will love your child if you will let her."
Juno exclaimed, "My child will be grateful for every scrap of love that comes its way." Then she said, "I shall be so proud to dress it in those nightdresses."
"You will make up to her for my and Emma's selfishness."
"What could you have done?" Juno snapped. "If she had wanted to talk, she would have. She did not waste her love. She spent it on Evelyn."
"You're shrewd."
Then Juno said, "She can't have wanted Bert's baby. She doesn't like him."
"True enough."
And Robert sat on, looking at the land he loved, enjoying a silence that grew between them, which he presently broke by asking, "Have you a name for your child?" Juno said, "Inigo."
"A very good name."
"And since we're on to babies," Juno surprised him, "could you tell me what a newborn baby looks like? I've never seen one." And Robert, remembering Evelyn, thought it looks exactly as its father will when he is a very old man. But he said,
"They look as though they had been soaking in the bath forever. They look all crinkled. They look very red and very cross and awfully old. Their fingers and toenails are as tender as the shells of baby shrimps."
Juno said, "That I shall like. Thank you, Robert."
part of the furniture, side 4. Comfortable? Yes. Anthony and Hugh stood looking down at Juno, where she lay sleepy in the afternoon sun. Did we wake you? Their smiles were affectionate. I was counting butterflies on the buddleias. Have they finished with the threshing? Yes. Did you enjoy yourselves? Anthony said, the drama's enjoyable, golden grain pouring into sacks, muscly sunburned workmen stripped to the waist, the air full of chaff. There's an earthly satisfaction. I got chaff in my eye, it hurt like hell. Hugh sat by Juno on the grass. But yes, it was a job well done. And tomorrow, back to London. Poor us, Hugh sighed. And your job still to do. Anthony found it impossible to avert his eyes. Juno's arms and legs were long and slim, her neck fragile, but her belly was outrageous and enormous. Are you really comfortable? I am comfortable at the moment, prone, but otherwise walking about. Can't say I am. Question of balance is peculiar, but it's not forever. Not like a fat man carrying a big stomach, paying in perpetuity for overeating and drinking. And you are, after all, only playing for your pleasure, said Anthony comfortingly. Juno said, is that what it was? So that was pleasure. Juno, they exclaimed in distress. We had assumed, well, we thought you had had a wonderful time, a marvelous experience, pleasure of a subliminal sexual nature, a kind of pleasure. Are you sure that there was no pleasure? I can't honestly say that there was. How awful. Hugh was shocked. You will simply have to learn. Anthony was censorious. Who from? Juno grinned. Robert, of course. The young men collapsed into helpless laughter. But we can't sweetly. We belong to another persuasion, as you must be aware. Juno, laughing too, said, I was too discreet to think about it. Why suggest Robert? Why? Cried Hugh, sibling. He's the most dishing man there's ever been. Anthony said, I expect our Juno thinks Robert is too old, or she is fixated on Evelyn. No, Juno protested. Robert appears much younger than Evelyn did. And he is alive, which Evelyn is not, said Hugh, dissolving into giggles. Juno and Anthony, infected, joined in. Oh, Juno, look, your baby's laughing too. It's dancing a tango in there. Isn't that dreadfully uncomfortable? He watched Juno's heaving stomach with fascination. Juno said, sometimes it is. Perhaps it's letting me know it wants to come out. The three of them laughed as they lay on the grass on an Indian summer afternoon, with the warm sun slanting down on their youth and high spirits, the still air full of bees, butterflies sipping the buddleia. At some moment during that golden afternoon, in another part of the country where Jonty and Francis were practicing with live ammunition, some of it exploded, blinding Francis and blowing him off his feet, so that in spite of massive injections of morphine, he died in agony hours later, leaving Jonty to travel alone into the actuality of war. The Margate, blown off its hinges, lay on its side. It took all Robert's strength to fight his way up the last bit of the hill, cross the yard, open the front door. Relieved and exhausted, he sat to pull off his boots,
looked forward to his armchair and a stiff drink. Then the silence was broken by a voice screaming, "Ouch! Oh, bugger! Ah!" And he took the stairs 3 at a time. Anne said, "Thank goodness you're back. We should go at once." Robert said, "The road is blocked. There's no getting out. And the telephone? Lines down all over the place. And the doctor," Anne sounded almost pleased, "is old, is lame, and won't be able to get here. We will manage." Juno shouted, Oh, bugger!" gripping Robert's hands. "Sorry to yell," she said. Robert said, "Yell as loud as you please. It was supposed to help." Juno shouted, "Oh, God!" Robert said, "Sorry, darling, but you'll have to make do with us." Juno laughed at his slip of the tongue and said, "I'm so glad you're back. I want to get in the bath, but Anne won't let me." Anne said, "An idiotic idea." Robert said, "You're wrong. It should help. The water will support her and the warmth comfort. Go and run it." Anne said, "Some people," but went. Robert helped her into the water. "How's that?" "Oh, lovely. Anthony and Hugh said I'd pay for my pleasure. This must be it. I told them I'd had none." "What? What was she talking about?" "No pleasure, of course. Oh, ouch! Off we go again." She gripped the sides of the bath. Robert said, "Don't fight it, don't resist. Try and push the little bugger out when the pain comes. That's what cows and sheep do." "Okay, I'll push." Juno relaxed. "They said that you could teach me about pleasure. So will you?" "What? Teach me? This is hardly the moment to discuss making love." "It seems a very good moment to me." Juno shouted, "Oh!" She yelled, "Off we go again." "Then push, for God's sake." "And will you?" "All right, but let's get on with this job." "I'll hold you to that. Oh, gosh, I'm getting the hang of it, aren't I? Pushing. And to think Eleanor's litter was 14. Juno leaned back to rest. "Stay near, don't go away. How long is this likely to go on?" He was touched by her trust. "Not long. Let me rub your back. It's supposed to help." He pressed his fingers down her spine, feeling the knobs. "Lovely. Do you do this to Eleanor?" "She manages on her own. I think you should get out of that now and onto the bed. Hang on to me, just—" I know. Push. Oh, something is happening." Robert helped her onto the bed. Anne said, "Brave girl. Nearly there. Wait, steady. Oh, Juno, a little boy. You're Inigo. Oh, he's lovely." "Oh, but look out, sir. Hold this one. There's another. It's twins. Hey, presto, another lovely boy." "Give them to me. Let me look." Juno, exhausted, held out her arms. Oh, poor little things. Don't scream." Anne exclaimed, "Oh, dear God, one of them is blind." "Oh, no, he isn't blind." Juno looked into those reminiscent eyes. "He just has very pale eyes." She gazed at her sons, the one with black eyes, the others pale as water. Presently, Juno said, "You were right about shrimps. Look at their fingers." Gently, Robert let one of his fingers be grasped by each tiny fist. He felt terribly happy, almost hysterical. "What are their names?" Priscilla peered into the cradles. "The dark one is Inigo, and the fair one Presto." "Presto?" It's what Anne exclaimed when she picked him up. "Hey, presto!" So far he's Presto. They're not identical twins. Priscilla examined Juno's infants. "I must say, as babies go, they look splendid. You look wonderful, too, radiant." It was Anne who was wonderful, and Robert. I feel as though I'd been run over by a bus. Priscilla sat by the bed. So many questions one would like to ask.
Neither infant bore the slightest resemblance to anyone she had ever seen, and the mother looked like a postcard Madonna. "Has the doctor managed to reach you?" "Not yet. How did you get here, Mrs. Villiers?" "By the cliff path. Has your mother had her baby yet?" Juno said, "I don't know." "Oh." Priscilla was thoughtful. "Does she know about these?" "No." "I see. I see nothing," Priscilla thought. "No business of mine," she said. "Their uncle or aunt may not even be born yet. It's an original situation. And your aunt?" Juno shook her head. "I won't put my foot in it a second time," Priscilla promised. "Speaking of which, I ought to go. Now, if there's anything I can do at any time," she leaned down to kiss Juno's forehead, "you know where to find me. Please remember that." Juno said, "Thank you. I will." Priscilla said, "I admire your gumption," and went. At the foot of the hill, Robert and the men had finished clearing the road. He greeted Priscilla with a friendly kiss. "Couldn't keep away, I see." "Neither infant resembles anybody I've ever seen." Priscilla eyed Robert closely. "You never give up, do you, Priscilla?" Priscilla persisted. "Do they look like anybody you know, Robert?" "No." "You know, Robert, I rather suppose that Evelyn was the father," Priscilla ventured. "Did you really?" "Yes, really. Come on, Robert, you must have thought so, too." "No must about it." "And have you asked?" "No." "Shall you?" "No." Priscilla exclaimed, "I don't know how you can bear not to." "Oh, Pris, you old sleuth," Robert laughed outright. "Do you want to lift home?" "No, thanks, dear Robert, I'll walk, but I shall see you very soon." "I'm going to London." "Oh, for long?" "I have to see Evelyn's house. I've not been up since his funeral. It's a good time to go away, nothing much to do on the farm." Robert strolled towards his car, where Bert and John already sat on the back seat. "Don't you think it peculiar, Robert, that one child is dark and the other fair?" She peered in at the car window. Robert pressed the starter, and the engine sprang to life. "Mind your head." Priscilla withdrew. "I have to get away," Robert thought, "reorder my mind. Go through Evelyn's things, get used to my new situation, get used to this fresh pain." "Goodbye, old girl," he shouted, and set the car at the hill. If he hurried, he could catch the night train. Robert paid the taxi and watched it drive off. The steps of Evelyn's house were unswept. The letterbox and door knocker, unpolished for months, were almost black. He pushed Evelyn's latchkey into the lock and let himself in. Time was when the house was full of sound. Evelyn had had many friends, loved music. Walking to the stairs, his footsteps sounded loud. Somebody had rolled up the rugs. He climbed to the first floor, went into the drawing room where Evelyn had died. There was no sign of him now. He sat at his son's desk and began pulling out the drawers, sifting through papers. It was here that Evelyn had written that last letter. The telephone rang. He picked up the receiver. "Hello?" A woman said, "I saw you arrive. I'm the next-door neighbor who had found Evelyn, who had telephoned him at Copplestone." Robert said, "Of course, Mrs. Hunt." "I wondered, can I help? Would you like a meal or a drink, or am I intruding?" "No, no. Would you come round? I would be delighted." She might remember something. He could but ask. She said, "I'll come at once," sounding pleased. He ran down to let her in, said, "I'm very glad to see you. I was going to call." Well, easily might have. "You were so kind when Evelyn died." "Yes." In the drawing-room he lit the fire, settled Mrs. Hunt in an armchair. "I wondered whether you could help me," he said. "I'm looking to see whether there's anything I may have missed about that last night." "Those poor young things. Surely I told you at the time. He warned them, you know, but they so wanted to dance, and off they went." "Did you see the other girl, a girl who did not go with the others?" Oh, goodness me, there was another girl. I'd clean forgotten. She came in with Evelyn. Did you know who she was? Was she here often? Mrs. Hunt frowned. No, I don't think I'd seen her before. Why? Is it important? Evelyn gave her a letter for me, suggested she should work. Oh, the dear fellow, so he found you a girl. He said how difficult it was to find anyone suitable, that all he could send you were impermanent pederasts. Robert laughed. I wondered how well he knew her. Are you wondering whether he was in love with her? And whether she was in love with him? Or whether they quarrelled and she walked out, but thinking better of it, came down to see you because she wanted the job? Or is my imagination taking a gallop? Mrs. Hunt. Robert flushed. Mrs. Hunt chuckled. I can assure you he wasn't. Not in love, nor in the mood to take her to bed. I had learned to know your son, Robert. He was very tired, dying, as we know now. And now I remember the girl. She looked knackered, too. He wrote something rather odd in his letter. What? That I would find her rewarding. Well, there you are, said Mrs. Hunt. What a good job you do. From Evelyn's house he walked to Jermyn Street to have his hair cut at Penhaligon's. Then on impulse caught a bus which took him to Harrods, where in the perfumery department he bought a large bottle of Guerlain before going up to the toy department, where he bought 2 teddy bears. Violet Marlowe folded her sister-in-law's letter and replaced it in its envelope. What to do? Trouble? John Baines looked over the top of his newspaper, catching the eye of his fellow lodger. They now breakfasted with Violet, an arrangement which jarred on their nerves, for neither man cared for conversation before his bowels had worked. My sister-in-law has had her baby. Boy or girl? Girl. You'd think she'd be sorry, for there's already Juno, but no, she appears delighted, says her husband is totally enchanted. I quote, You'd think he'd want a son, but he has bought her pearls and a bracelet. Funny, she doesn't mention Juno. Violet picked up the letter and began to reread it. Does she know about Juno? Have you heard from your delinquent niece? Bill asked. Isn't she about due to give birth to the Canadian infant's nephew or niece? Have you been in touch? Actually, no. Violet flushed. I haven't. It's embarrassing. The girl isn't married. The child will be illegitimate. We are in the 1940s, Violet, Bill teased. She is your niece. It will be your great-niece or nephew, will it not? She thanked you for sending on her clothes. Did she not mind it, her manners? I admit she did. So why don't you have that little holiday you need so badly? Go and see her. You could visit your old friend who was so bad at hockey. Presently, pedalling up the incline towards High Park Corner, Bill Bailey said to John Baines, I have sown the seed. His friend replied, Well done. Let's hope it works. Work it did, for Priscilla, caught off guard on the telephone, extended a pressing invitation, and within 10 days Violet found herself in the train heading towards the West Country. I had not realized your house was so large, Violet said, taking in the size of Priscilla's hall, hung about with portraits of gentlemen in uniform flanked by ladies with bedroom eyes and deep décolleté. Priscilla said, It's a lot to keep up. Let me show you your room, and then we will have supper. You must be tired. Violet examined her room. Colfax and Fowler chintzes, monogrammed sheets and towels. She bounced on the bed. She should be comfortable. In the drawing-room, Priscilla poured sherry. I expect you're anxious to see your niece. Violet said, Oh, yes, of course, I am anxious, too, to meet Mr. Copplestone, see who she works for. Priscilla said, Robert is in London. I don't know when he will be back. Violet could choke on her curiosity. Violet said, Is Copplestone far? Shall I be able to get over? I can perhaps hire a taxi. Priscilla said, Don't be silly. I will drive you. Not for anything would she miss Violet's meeting with Juno. They go by the names of Inigo and Presto, she said. Who? Your great-nephews, Juno's sons. She watched Violet go red,
then white. You did know, didn't you? That's why you're here, isn't it? One had been dropped from the hockey team, but here one was in one's own house. What an extraordinary garment! Violet stood at the top of the hill, watching Juno walk up from the farm. She was wearing the sheepskin coat and the black wool cap she had worn on arrival at Copplestone. She carried a basket slung on each arm, and her cheeks glowed pink from the frost. Priscilla said, "I'm so envious. It's the warmest thing I've ever seen." Violet said, "I'd call it unsuitable for farm work. I wonder what she's got in those baskets." As Juno came within earshot, she waved and shouted, "Hello, Juno, hello!" Juno cried, "Aunt Violet, what are you doing here?" "Tiny holiday, staying with my old school friend." Violet advanced. Priscilla watched. Juno said, "So you've come to snoop. Well, here's what you've come to see. Have a good look." She deposited the baskets at Violet's feet. "Your great-nephews," she said, with what Priscilla would later describe as perfect aplomb. Violet stared into the baskets. It was later said that their contents stared back. She said, "No Marlowe ever had eyes that colour. Where on earth can those eyes come from? It might be blind." Juno said, "He." Violet said, "Sorry, he, of course. Should they be on cold ground?" Juno said, "They are well swaddled up." But she picked up the baskets. "You had them with you in the cowshed," Violet stated. "I park the basket in a manger while I work. There is a precedent." Juno grinned, and equably Violet replied, "So there is. A peck of dirt never hurt anyone." Then Priscilla, scenting a truce, suggested, "Why don't we all get into the house where it's warm? Perhaps Anne will give us tea." They trooped into the house, where Juno put the baskets on the hall table while they took off their coats. Then Violet, surprising herself, said, "You look marvellous, Juno. You've got your figure back. Your mother has put on a stone and is having trouble with her legs." Juno said, "Oh, I had not heard." She felt stricken and surprised. Violet, her tone sharp, asked, "Hasn't she written?" Juno said, "No." "Not told you about your little sister? Not told you of the pearls and bracelet from your stepfather? Not told you that he's totally enchanted?" "No." "Have you written to her?" "Not yet." "Why not?" Juno said, "It would be a pity to mar her happiness." Violet, surprised to find herself warming to Juno, said, "Mar. Such a good word." Juno said, "I read a lot while I was waiting to explode. It enlarged my vocabulary." "Oh, well," Violet said, "if I were you, I'd be grateful to have the Atlantic between you. Twin sons, after all, trump one daughter, whichever side of the blanket. One can't help seeing the funny side." Then she reached a tentative finger to touch each child, murmured, "Not like any Marlowe," looked up at the walls of the hall and stairs hung with portraits, and, scrutinizing Robert's mutton-chopped great-grandfather, an 18th-century lady in wig with lapdog, and a Copplestone in ruff with hand on sword hilt and louche expression, she repeated, "Not the remotest resemblance." Driving back to Priscilla's house, Violet broke a ruminative silence. "And what do you think?" "About what, Violet?" "Will he make an honest woman of her?" "Who are we talking about?" Priscilla hedged. Violet snapped, "The infant's father, of course." Priscilla said, "And who would that be?" "One surmises your Copplestone friend. I was sorry not to meet him, lurking in London." Priscilla said, "Dear Violet, your imagination is bolting. Robert is not their father, nor was his son, Evelyn." "Then who is?" "I, too, have asked that question." "Oh." "And as far as I can see, it is to remain unanswered." "Does your friend Copplestone not know?" "My dear Violet,
He has not asked either. Then the man must be mad. And although Priscilla was inclined to agree, she stayed loyally silent. November, turning into December, found Robert still in London. Telephoning home 2 weeks before, he had, after giving Anne instructions for Bert, asked whether Juno had yet found a name for the second twin. Anne told him, "She's calling him Felix." Curious, he had said, "Do you know why?" Anne had replied, "She says she's happy, and Felix means happiness. But between you and me, sir, I think Presto will stick and the Felix just be official." He had laughed, and before they were cut off, their regulation 3 minutes being nearly up, he had asked, "Anything else?" Anne said, "Oh, yes. She says to ask whether it's not time to let Eleanor free in the woods to eat acorns." He had said, "Yes. Tell her, yes." So now, shuffling through the leaves, he was reminded of Juno, and his thoughts were back to revolving as unhappily as had become their custom during the last month, as he walked in the parks and visited what friends he had who were not too busy to see him, taking them out to dinner or to lunchtime concerts at the National Gallery, preferring music to the frenzied talk of the war. Robert made an appointment with his solicitor and instructed him as to his will. Edwin looked at him over his half-moon spectacles. "All right, Robert, that is quite clear, but out of interest, who are these children, Inigo and Felix Marlowe? They do not seem to be family. Is there a connection I should know about?" Robert said, "I was present when they were born." "Yes?" How strange it had been, helping Juno give birth. She'd been so brave, shouted so loud, intelligent too, to demand a bath, and between spasms of pain, those odd disjointed queries about pleasure. What was that about? He knew very well what that was about. It was sexual pleasure. What a time to ask. What possessed the girl? "No," he said, meeting Edwin's eye, "there is no family connection, none at all." Remembering the euphoria that first sighting had engendered. For these infants of Juno's were not, could not be his grandchildren, were not, as he had for months imagined, Evelyn's. Who had fathered them was immaterial. The euphoria had not, of course, lasted. 2 days later, Robert signed his will, and now, kicking through the leaves in Green Park, he knew that there was nothing to keep him in London. He must go back to Copplestone, to his farm, and face up to being too old to make himself ridiculous. Too old to be in love. Robert paused by the moor gate to look across to the farm, and above it, nestling into the hill, his house, and felt the lift of spirit that he always felt on reaching home. It was stupid to have lingered so long in London. Here he belonged. There was nowhere else to go. The evening was still and frosty. Below him in the farmyard, Bert came out of the cowshed, shut the door, and stood looking up the hill. Robert followed his gaze. Juno was standing in the dusk on the edge of the wood, wearing the sheepskin coat and woolen cap. She called, "Eleanor, time for tea! Eleanor!" Her voice carried across the valley. Suddenly, as if by magic, the sow was brushing against Juno's legs, surrounded by piglets. She was patting the sow. He heard her voice. "All hams and sides of bacon present. Everybody there? 1, 2, 3, 4, she counted. 11, 12. Right then, race you to your sty." And she turned to run down the hill with the sow and litter streaming behind her. "You'll run all the fat off 'em," Bert came to meet her. "I've mixed their meal for you." "Oh, thank you, Bert, thank you. You should not have bothered." Their voices carried in the frozen air. "No bother?" Robert raised his eyebrows. "Well, well, you need to get back to your own." "They're safe with Anne. In you go, Eleanor." "Maybe, but Anne can't feed 'em," Bert nagged. "They will still be asleep. We have this exchange every night, Bert," she teased. "Maybe so. You get along up." "Good night then, Bert. Thank you." Bert watched her go. Good night, girl. Then he shouted, "Why don't you take the path?" Juno's voice, diminishing as she climbed the hill, called back, "I prefer my short cut." "You'll trip," Bert called. "Fall, hurt yourself." "No, I won't." She was laughing. "Bert." Robert came up beside the man. "Sir, you back? Didn't hear no car." "The taxi was busy. I walked, glad to stretch my legs. Did I give you a shock?" "Was just packing it in for the night. Juno just called the pigs in from the wood. They're after acorns. I was watching. Got a touch with animals, that one. Didn't allow so at first, but she has." "Good. Everything all right here?" "Yes, sir. Very glad to see you back, sir." "Thank you, Bert. Eleanor's litter look fine. See a difference in them babbies, too, sir. Quite plumping out. Two fine little babbies." "Oh, yes, the babies. Good. You sound quite proprietorial," Robert said. "I sound what?" "Interested, Bert. You were never a baby's man." "Well, I am now. We all take a turn," Bert snapped. "'Tis nice for a change to care for something you ain't going to eat." Robert said, "I'd not thought of it that way. You've turned philosopher while I've been in London." Bert snorted. Robert said good night. Turning to go, he added, "Where's this shortcut?" "You stick to the path, sir, or you'll fall." Robert said, "I think I already have." Reaching the house, Robert let himself in, took off his coat, and breathed the familiar smell of wood fires, furniture polish, and something new. There was a bowl of hyacinths on the hall table. He stooped to sniff. Not since he was a child and his mother planted them had there been hyacinths. In the kitchen, Anne exclaimed, "Here, sir, you did not say you were coming." A baby lay across her knees. She was changing its nappy. Juno was in the rocking chair by the stove, nursing the other child. She said, "Oh, Robert, how lovely! We did not hear you arrive." The infant let go of her nipple, then reached for it back, clutching her breast with its fist. He returned her smile, amazed by her breasts. "I'm interrupting," he said. Juno said, "Nonsense, how could you?" and moved the child to her other breast. Anne said, "Sit down, you must be tired. I'll make a pot of tea." She laid the baby in its basket and went to fill the kettle. Robert said, "And how are they?" He peered curiously into the basket. "Which one is this?" Juno said, "Inigo. They're flourishing." "And grown a lot." "That's a very smart suit." Juno appraised Robert. "Evelyn suggested I had it made at the beginning of the war. He said clothes would be rationed and it would help my morale if the Germans won to meet them properly dressed, not shabby." "Fuck my suit. I want to tell her how beautiful she is, and I can't." "I've something for your sons, Juno," and went back into the hall to extract parcels from his overcoat pockets. Watching him go, Juno said, "But it is a beautiful suit," meaning that she had not realized that Robert was so good-looking, and Anne, handing her a cup of tea, said, "Yes, and he's had his hair properly cut." Juno changed the baby's nappy and laid it in the basket beside its brother, as Robert, returning with parcels, put two in her lap. Juno undid the parcels. 2 teddy bears. "Robert, thank you. They will be so precious. Their very first toys. Thank you." Robert said, "Good," taking the cup Anne held out to him. I hoped, he thought, that I would not be so pleased to see her. I hoped that she would have lost her looks. I hoped I would be sane again. "I hoped you would be pleased," he said. Juno said, I am very pleased." "Now, tell me about you. What has been going on apart from Bert's transformation into geniality?" "Nothing much. The babies and the farm. And oh, Bert allowed me to do the muck spreading." She could not tell him that recently she had woken with no thought of Jonty or Francis, that her days were no longer obsessed, that somehow they had evaporated as bad dreams do. She was happy. She said, As you see, I'm busy and happy, and fancy Bert allowing me to do that." "I'll have to have a word with Bert," Robert said. "But first, this is for you. I thought it might compliment the bears." And he gave her his present. Juno unwrapped the packet. "Oh," she said in awe, "scent! I've never had proper scent. How wonderful, how delicious! Now I won't stink of muck." And Robert, though pleased, thought, muck or Guerlain, it won't make a blind bit of difference to me. Robert was woken by the need to pee. He went to his bathroom and, without putting on a light, eased his need. Back in his room, Jessie stood by the door, asking to be let out. Sighing, Robert pulled on a pair of trousers and a sweater and followed the dog down the stairs, where she padded towards the library. A light showed, and Juno sat on the hearthrug, staring into the fire. Surprised, Robert said, "Juno," and seeing that she wept, "What's up?" He came forward and sat in his armchair. Juno folded the letter she had been reading and stuffed it back in its envelope. Robert said dryly, "Somebody has written something hurtful." Juno said, "My Aunt Violet. She thinks I should know how matters stand." "Yes." "She writes that after considerable soul-searching, she felt it her duty to write to my mother and apprise her of my twins, and that my mother has written back. And she seems to have done some soul-searching too, having embarked on a new successful and happy marriage. It appears she has given birth to a beautiful baby girl. She is very much enjoying her new life, and although she gave me every opportunity to join her, the twins do rather alter things. They do not fit her husband Jack Sontag's prominent position. She has arrived at the conclusion that it will be better all round if we go our separate ways. Oh, yes, she wishes me well. I rather like that bit. It rounds things off." Robert listened. He knew from her voice that her throat was sore from crying. "I should not really mind. I suppose I'm angry with her, as she must be angry with me, but I do rather feel she might have written to me herself, not left it to Aunt Violet." Juno pulled a handkerchief out of her pocket and blew her nose. She said, "I shall just have to get used to the idea that I am not wanted." In Juno's room, Inigo and Presto whimpered. Juno leapt to her feet, threw Violet's letter into the fire. "One of them is crying." She made for the door. Robert shouted, "I want you. You are wanted. I want you all." But she was gone. She had not heard. He swore, "Bugger! Bugger! Bugger!" When illness hit the village of Copplestone in 1942, its inhabitants stopped talking of Rommel's defeat at El Alamein. If one of their young men was serving overseas, they congratulated him on being beyond reach of the most virulent strain of measles in living memory. Inigo and Presto came out in a rash. Within hours they had streaming colds, coughs, and high temperatures. They were not yet a year old. Standing between their cots, his stethoscope dangling round his neck, the doctor told Juno and Robert that they had pneumonia. "I don't want to be alarmist, but their best hope is for us to have them in the hospital." At the hospital, cots had been made ready. Nurses in uniform snatched Inigo and Presto from their mother's arms. The doctor joined Robert and Juno, who had not slept for nights and had a streaming cold, in the corridor. Producing his stethoscope, he applied it to Juno's chest. "Stand still, Juno. Let's have a thermometer, matron. As I thought, 101. Take her home, Robert, put her to bed, and keep her there tomorrow. I will give you a pill to give her last thing." Juno said, "I must stay with my children. They'll think I've deserted them. They'll never forgive me. They'll die without me." The doctor said, "What possible use can you be to them ill?" And Robert said, "Stop this rubbish," and dragged her out to the car. Fumbling for her handkerchief, Juno snuffled. She said, "I'm so terribly frightened," but said no more, for she could see that Robert was also afraid. Anne kept Juno in bed the next day, and Robert haunted the hospital. Towards evening, the doctor came to make his examination. Straightening, he said, "I think you can go home now, Robert. You can honestly tell Juno they're better."
Robert drove home to tell Juno, who was better too. He promised to telephone the hospital last thing before he went to bed. Then he went out into the night and walked with his dogs across his fields and up through the wood to the top of the cliff, where he stood looking out at the sea, considering his predicament. It was long after midnight when he rang the hospital and asked to speak to the night nurse. When the doctor himself answered the telephone, Robert felt complete panic. "Are they dead? You said they were better." The doctor laughed. "Don't be a fool, Robert. They're sleeping like tops. You'll have them home in no time." Juno's door was ajar. He crept in. The room was chilly, the fire dying. He moved cautiously to put wood on the fire. Juno said, "I'm not asleep. Too anxious." "Did you telephone?" "They're sleeping. Their temperatures are normal. They're going to be all right." "Oh, God. Oh, Robert, you're crying." She reached up and caught hold of him. "Why don't you get in? Then we can cry together." Demurring, Robert said, "What about your cold?" She said, "I will give it to you," and held back the bedclothes. So he got in. And later, when she woke after sleeping in his arms, he thought he should make light, excuse what had happened. He said, "Oh, darling, this is what's called one thing leading to another." And she said, "I thought it was called pleasure. I had no idea. What a surprise." When again he prevaricated, "You have a cold. I should not have. It was an aberration. I'm too old, much too old." She said, "Oh, really? And what nonsense? And stop quibbling. And have we time to do it again before we get up to go to the hospital?" He simply said, "Yes." Juno stretched her legs and looked about her. A few tables away, a middle-aged couple were sharing a joke, and at the table next to her, a solitary man read the Evening Standard and sipped vodka and tonic. Seeing her arrive, the barman came across with a glass of champagne on a salver. "Good morning, madam. Mr. Coppleston's order. He's reserved a table for lunch and will be a few minutes late." Juno said, "Thank you, that's just what I need," and sipped the champagne. The solitary man lowered his newspaper and said, "Juno?" Turning to look, Juno said, "Jonty." Jonty said, "What are you doing here?" "Meeting my family for lunch." "And you?" "Meeting my daughter." "You married?" "I married a girl called Sheena." "I remember her. And how is your mother?" Pleased that her voice was steady. "She died." Juno said, "I am sorry. And your aunt?" "She died, too. Soon after my uncle. My father died 10 years ago. Heart attack." "Oh, dear. Sad." "Juno, you look wonderful. You haven't changed at all." Juno said, "You look pretty much the same yourself. What is your daughter called? Is she beautiful?" "Victoria. I think her beautiful. She's late. She was meeting some boyfriends." "Girls do that." "It's the boyfriends I worry about." He sounded pettish. Juno said, "Well, these days there's the pill." Jonty flushed. "You are married?" He sounded aggressive. Juno said, "I am." He had not changed all that much. Broader, coarser perhaps. He was on the wane. Jonty said, "We knew you hadn't gone to Canada. Your mother wrote to mine, but we couldn't find you. We couldn't find your aunt." Juno felt a surge of rage. "You can't have looked very far. She's in the telephone book. She is still alive." She drank a mouthful of champagne. Then she said, "I was only part of the furniture." Jonty exclaimed, "No." "And Francis?" Juno said. "What happened to Francis?" "Francis was killed in the war." Juno said, "I did not know." A comfortless silence grew between them, to be broken by Robert swinging in from the street, exclaiming, "So sorry to be late, darling. Did the barman give you a drink? Oh, good. I'm terribly sorry, but I have to make 2 calls. Do you mind? I'll try not to be long," and was gone. Jonty said, "Is that your husband?" Juno said, "Yes." Jonty said, "But he's old." Juno said, "But gorgeous. We took a shortcut through the generations. How old is he? 70? 80? And you are? 40. And happy? Oh, yes." Sounding sincere, Jonty said, "I am glad." Juno said, "And you?" "Oh, you know, so-so." His face lit up, and he said, "Ah, here comes my daughter. Good God, who's she with?" The blood drained from his face as Inigo and Presto hurried up to their mother, exclaiming, "Ma, we're late, forgive us. And it's all Victoria's fault. This is Victoria. Victoria, this is our mother. Look at these, Ma. We bought them for Bert. Do you think he'll wear them?" They snatched from a bag Union Jack pants. The very tops, the true essence of vulgarity. Both were in a state of high spirits. Juno shook hands with Victoria, who was indeed beautiful, and said, "What have you done with your aunt, boys?" "She's on her way," Presto said. "She's gone over the top. Bought presents for everyone back in Montreal. We couldn't stop her," he said, laughing. "Didn't try. We're starving." And Juno, aware of Jonty beside her, said, "He's talking about my sister, 2 weeks younger than her nephews, another example of short-cutting through generations. My mother died a year ago. These are my twins, Inigo and Presto. Darlings?" Easy-mannered and casual, they shook hands with Jonty. "How do you do?" Their eyes, black and palest blue, wandering incuriously past him towards the restaurant, anticipated lunch. Victoria exclaimed that she must go to the lavatory, and Jonty that it was time to leave. He said to Victoria, "Hurry up, then," which she did, disappearing and reappearing just as Robert rejoined them in time to register the scene, and Jonty departing. Robert said, "Hello, everybody. Ready for lunch?" Noting her pallor, he very quietly asked Juno, "Are you all right, darling?" Juno said, "I hope so. That was Inigo's father." Robert murmured, "So I observed. And Presto's?" For Jonty, shaking hands with Presto, had visibly flinched. Juno said, "Killed in the war." Robert sighed. "Ah, watch out, he's coming back." Jonty, reaching the street, had turned about, and leaving Victoria standing on the pavement, came up to Juno, and with his face close to hers, hissed, "If those two are fucking my daughter, it's incest." And Juno said, "Yes, it is."